Next few days it remains unsettled as that low pressure stays in charge. Further showers and longer spells of rain and temperatures around average.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good afternoon. It's 3 o'clock. This is the GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me in the next hour, going head-to-head, Nigel Nelson and also Ben Habib. They'll be going head-to-head in a clash of minds. Then from 4 till 6, Amy Nickel and Danny Kelly will be joining me. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you very much, Nana. I'm Rory Smith in the GB Newsroom. The Culture Secretary says she's been assured by the BBC that allegations against a presenter are being investigated swiftly and sensitively. Lucy Fraser, who spoke to Director General Tim Davey, says the corporation must now be given the space to establish the facts and take appropriate action. A man's been accused of paying a teenager tens of thousands of pounds for explicit images, with the young person's mother telling the Sun she saw a photo of him in his underwear on her child's phone. Well, former Conservative Party leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith says the case has not been handled properly by the BBC.
I don't quite know what they're doing. It's in a mess, clearly. If you read the newspaper reports, you can see that the BBC has tried to play this down from the beginning, and it's not worked because it's exploded. They don't have any plan. Any inquiries that are taking place seem to be a mess, and that's led to a whole series of reputational damage across the newspapers to the BBC. The BBC should act like everybody else does, immediately suspend somebody pending the investigation,
Yes.
and that way it's clear, and then they can get on with it. At this stage, try and do it quietly and behind the scenes. It never works because somebody's blown the gaff and they're in trouble over it.
More than 1,000 people have crossed the Channel on small boats over the past 2 days. The Home Office says over 600 people were intercepted on Friday and almost 400 made the journey yesterday. Well, despite storm warnings, conditions are calm, and GB News understands more than 200 people have already been intercepted this morning. It brings this year's total to 12,700. The Home Office says the number of people risking their lives is unacceptable. Britain is preparing to host the US president, who's due to arrive this evening. If you're watching on television, these are now live pictures at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware. The president is just about to disembark from a helicopter, where he will then get on Air Force One. That will take him to Stansted Airport. Well, tomorrow, Joe Biden will meet the King at Windsor Castle. He'll then hold talks with the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, where he is expected to raise concerns over Brexit. Well, America's decision to send cluster munitions to Ukraine could also be discussed. Well, Joe Biden's visit comes ahead of the NATO summit in Lithuania, where the Prime Minister will urge allies to bolster their defence spending. Speaking in Vilnius on Tuesday, Rishi Sunak is expected to say that we're seeing unprecedented security challenges. The UK remains one of the few NATO members meeting the alliance's requirement to spend at least 2% of national income on defence. More than 700 firearms have been seized in the UK by the National Crime Agency. Forces have been working with police in Spain to stop guns, which can be easily converted, from entering the UK. In 11 cases, firearms were sent to people with mental health issues, and 7 involved people with extremist views. The NCA says 74 people have been arrested, resulting in 50 convictions over the past 5 years. Just Stop Oil has denied any involvement in the stunt at the former Chancellor's wedding yesterday. The group posted a video of a woman throwing orange confetti at George Osborne and his wife Thea Rogers, but it's now saying it was not responsible. Just Stop Oil, however, applauded the move, which generated publicity for its cause. The Chancellor is set to outline so-called evolutionary pension reforms to boost economic growth. Jeremy Hunt plans to make changes to pension funds, encouraging investors to support fast-growing businesses. Well, in a speech tomorrow, he's expected to say the changes will be gradual, not drastic. The government says the aim is to help savers, pension schemes and the UK. Concerns have been raised about the thousands of displaced Ukrainians who are still in temporary accommodation in Scotland. The Liberal Democrats say more than 3,000 Ukrainians are still in hotels and around 700 are on board the MS Victoria cruise ship. Well, the party says progress has been slow and it criticised the lack of resources. The government says it's working on longer-term housing. And the Met Office is warning of more heavy showers and thunderstorms. It's after rain and storms disrupted major sporting events such as Wimbledon and the Ashes yesterday. The Met Office is predicting prolonged heavy rain in Scotland, and in Northern Ireland it will face strong winds, hail and even potential flooding. Heavy showers are also expected to hit Wales, the Midlands and the southwest of England. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Rory. Before we get stuck into the debate, if you just tuned in, welcome on board. I'm Nana Akua. And over the next hour, we'll be going head-to-head in a clash of minds. And joining me today, political commentator Nigel Nelson and also former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib. Right, so on the way as well, we'll be discussing the BBC is in a crisis mode at the moment. It's in crisis, seems to be in that mode for quite some time. It's always in crisis. Urgent talks have been held between the Culture Secretary and the BBC over an unnamed presenter accused of paying child for sexual pictures. Nigel Farage, Jeremy Hunt, and now even our military. Who's next? We'll be asking whether the government has lost control of our banking system. Inspectors from the prison watchdog have branded new migrant centres in Durham inhumane, but why? And, well, the answer, no Wi-Fi and a lack of a hair salon. I mean, seriously, can you believe it? And, of course, the war in Ukraine, it reaches its 500th day. We'll look at the growing unease over the US's decision to supply Ukraine with more cluster bombs. Is that really the most peaceful way to try to end the conflict there? And despite the BBC in the headlines today, there's also more drama with ITV, with the company forced to deny tensions between hosts Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary. Yes, they were there to rescue the sinking ship, that is, this morning. That's coming up in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. So it's just coming up to 9 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News, the People's Channel, of course. And don't forget as well, you can listen to us live on digital radio. Right, so let's start with the first story. We're going head-to-head with this one. It's the BBC Director General. He's told the Culture Secretary that the corporation are swiftly and sensitively investigating the allegations against an unnamed presenter. Now, this comes after reports that a prominent BBC presenter paid a teenager for sexually explicit pictures. Let's cross over to Broadcasting House and get the latest from our political reporter, Olivia Utley. So, Olivia, can you give us an update?
Yes, well, today it feels very much as though the spotlight has turned onto the BBC. Over the last few days, it has emerged that BBC presenter, a household name as it's known, has been paying a teenager to send sexually explicit photos. Up to £35,000 has been put into this teenager's bank account. Now, that was the mother who has raised this story, who's given it to The Sun, says that she went forward with her complaint 2 months ago. So the question is, why, between the middle of May and now, has this presenter not been taken off air? And why does it appear that no investigation is underway? The BBC has said that it investigates any claims of inappropriate behaviour by its presenters that it's given, but in some cases, it doesn't necessarily say in this case, but that in some cases, it simply doesn't have enough information to progress any further. And it has promised that it will investigate. But for the mother of this child, who she claims that the money paid to her son or daughter has been used to fund a crack addiction, the fact that this presenter has still been on air all this time for the last 8 weeks is pretty damning. Politicians from all sides of the political spectrum, from Priti Patel, the former Home Secretary, a darling of the Tory right, to Rachel Reeves, the Shadow Chancellor, have criticised the BBC, saying that the investigations process doesn't appear to be swift enough. Priti Patel has gone as far as to say that broadcasters, broadcasting gods, she calls them, are simply given too much protection, and the BBC has become a nameless and faceless organisation. So the BBC is now under a lot of pressure to respond very quickly. But whatever it does now, there's a feeling around that even that might be too little, too late, given that 2-month break when nothing appeared to have been done.
Olivia, thank you very much. That's Olivia Utley. She's our GB News political reporter. And some breaking news with that story with regard to the BBC BBC. The unnamed presenter has been suspended, but they still remain unnamed. Right, so let's welcome again to my panel, GBNews senior political commentator Nigel Nelson, also former Brexit Party MEP Ben Habib. Let's start with you, Nigel. So this whole scenario with the BBC, they seem to take so long to do anything. I've made complaints to them about somebody saying something to me, and I went in a complaint loop. It was ridiculous. But why do you think it's taken them so long to actually do anything since the initial letter that they received?
Well, there's an awful lot of sort of missing pieces to this jigsaw. So the question obviously is, first off, how did the allegation come through? Presumably, big stars get lots of allegations coming against them with no evidence thrown in. Now, what the mother seems to have said is that there is some evidence from bank accounts, from online bank accounts, that she would have been able to produce. So quite clearly, if the BBC knew that money had been paid to that child, that would have warranted an instant investigation. The BBC seemed to suggest that the mother has not cooperated with them as much as she should have done. But either way, it's a serious...
Where did you see that? Where did you see that?
It's in the BBC statement. The BBC statement is that it suggests that they haven't had as much contact with her for an investigation as they would like. Now, if that turns out to be true, one can understand why it couldn't be taken on. But it's such a serious allegation that the BBC should have moved much quicker, and certainly it's right that now it's reached the public domain, they're moving quickly now.
Ben Habib, your thoughts?
Well, I think it's important in all these matters, and I know we're going to talk about banks and so on later, that everyone is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
And as Nigel says, there can't be any shortage of famous people having false allegations made against them. So we need to tread quite carefully. The thing that doesn't add up for me is that this seems like an open and shut case, the way it's being presented. You know, an older man, a man of... a mature man has paid money for sexually explicit photographs of a child. That seems to be what's being said. That is illegal. So why hasn't the mother...
Well, it depends how old the person is, doesn't it?
What, the child? Well, presumably under 16.
But the
under 18 is the important...
The under 18, but the fact is that it's pictures of this person and they're explicit.
Yeah, but...
It's got a very seedy whiff to it. It's not a good thing. It's not good at all.
If it is criminal, which is the way it's being presented as far as the way I read it, is why did the mother go to the Sun and not to the police? Granted, with a serious allegation like that, if supported by bank statements which clearly evidence the money flowing, for whatever reason, you know, the BBC should investigate. But as a parent, I would have gone straight to the police over it.
Yeah.
And you know,
I suppose maybe it's because they didn't feel that there was much response. Let me read you the BBC statement anyway, because Nigel, you referenced it, so I'll read it in full. Here's what the BBC's statement says. The BBC takes any allegations seriously, and we have robust internal processes in place to proactively deal with such allegations. This is a complex and fast-moving set of circumstances, and the BBC is currently working as quickly as possible to establish the facts in order to properly inform appropriate next steps. It is important that these matters are handled fairly and with care. We have been clear that if at any point new information comes to light or is provided to us, that this will be acted upon appropriately and actively followed up. The BBC's first became aware of a complaint in May. New allegations were put to us on Thursday of a different nature, and in addition to our own inquiries, we've also been in touch with external authorities in line with our protocols. We can also confirm a male presenter of staff has been suspended. We expect to be in the position to provide a further update in the coming days. As the process continues, the BBC board will continue to keep up to date. That's what the BBC has said. So there's no... they're just saying that new information has come to light, which is why...
I was talking about an earlier statement they made when it first came out, yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of people look at the BBC then and think, oh, God, there's so many things that keep coming to light with it. How comfortable do we feel to pay this licence fee that we were talking about only yesterday, and they're talking about now a model that will be taken from broadband rather than actually discussing whether they should even be funded by the public?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's interesting. The BBC trades, I think, slightly on the notion that it's a national treasure, that it's part of our, you know, the sort of British setup, as it were, beyond reproach. But, of course, it isn't. And a bit like the NHS, we need to have a proper discussion about what the BBC's role is in our lives. And it's quite different set of circumstances the BBC operates in now than it did 30 years ago. And, you know, the whole question about the licence fee needs to be taken in the round with the whole setup of the BBC. What is the BBC? And an awful lot of stories seem to be coming up about the BBC. Richard Sharp, the chairman, had to resign recently because of the manner in which he was appointed.
But that was a bit of a non-story as well. I felt that was somewhat unfair because it was more to do with the fact that he passed on a contact to somebody who then maybe lent Boris some money, which is a cousin.
But it would have been much more straight. The whole thing would have been much more straightforward.
He was actually doing a good job as well.
Yeah, but it would have been much more straightforward if the BBC wasn't a national entity, that if it was a private entity, then Richard Sharp's appointment would be done in the normal way that private businesses deal with their appointments. It would never have been a public domain issue. And so it treads this kind of weird line between operating in an ever-changing social media-dominated world and still claiming to be, a public sector broadcaster and impartial public sector broadcaster. And I think that whole thing needs to be looked at in the round.
Nigel.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Ben's absolutely right. There are a lot of comparisons with the NHS on this, both on funding and the way the public actually approaches the BBC. It seems to me that if you're going to have an independent national public service broadcaster and an international one, the licence fee is the best way of doing it, because what you don't want is advertising and therefore they're in hock to commercial operations. The question is how the licence fee works. The idea of £159 across the board, it is, as Richard Sharp said, a regressive kind of tax. So perhaps we could do it on property value based on, say, council tax bands. You could do it on the number of devices you have in your home. At the moment, one licence
why can't you do it on whether you actually watch the thing or not? I mean, if you don't watch it, then why should you have to pay for it?
You could always do it on subscription.
But I actually also believe that I don't think they should get just to go straight to subscription models with all the things they have in place. Otherwise, they'll wipe the floor with all the commercial operators because they've got so much of their own stuff. Well, listen, I want to ask you guys, if you're listening and watching, to get in touch with your views on the BBC and whether you think actually now is the time for them to look at the model with which we pay for it and actually determine that it's totally out of date. You're with me, I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, Rishi Sunak is set to welcome Biden to the UK in the wake of the president promising cluster bombs to Ukraine. Has the US gone too far? But first, let's get an update with your weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, further showers and longer spells of rain over the next few days. There will be some sunshine though, but for many of us it will feel fresher. And the reason for this is this area of low pressure. It's been around over the last few days, just sat to the west of us, but over the coming few days it actually spreads towards us and increases the risk of showers and longer spells of rain even more. This evening we do have thundery showers across the UK, but they will start to fade away, and then most places overnight we'll see clear skies, though towards the early hours we could see some showers moving back into southwestern parts of the UK. Temperatures generally the low to mid-teens, so a little fresher than recent nights, but still quite warm for the time of year. Monday morning gets off to a dry start for many, plenty of sunny spells, though the cloud quickly thickens from the southwest. This area of rain pushes north-eastwards through the day, turning heavy at times, particularly across Wales, into the Midlands, northwest England too. Elsewhere we'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers, and the best of the sunshine towards the southeast. We could see highs around 24 or 25 Celsius. Elsewhere generally the high teens to low 20s. That area of rain across North Wales, northern England, continues to push further north as we head through the evening, and then further spells of rain push into southern parts of the UK as we move into the early hours. This could be heavy at times, so overnight a lot of cloud around outbreaks of rain, and that will keep temperatures up generally a little higher, 14 to 17 degrees across much of the country. So it means a cloudy, wet start for many Tuesday morning. Heavy showers already, but it should brighten up as we move through the morning into the afternoon, but that will trigger a few heavy showers too. Over the next few days it remains unsettled as that low pressure stays in charge. Further showers and longer spells of rain and temperatures around average.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
So coming up, I'll be asking, is it inhumane to house migrants in an area with slow Wi-Fi and without a hair salon? A watchdog thinks so. We'll be getting stuck into that. But before that, I'll be asking, has the government lost control of the banks? That's on the way. It's just gone 24 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's head-to-head. Let's take a look at what you've been saying with regard to the allegations against the unnamed BBC presenter. Let's see, with regard to the licence fee. Hugo says, why is the BBC investigating this allegation and not the police or Child Protection Agency? Very good question. They may have already approached the police. We don't know, but if they had, you'd think they would say. Julia says, one more reason to get rid of the BBC and the licence fee. I never watch the BBC, so it's very frustrating that I have to pay the licence fee. Emily says, I think it's time to stop the BBC licence fee. It seems corrupt, has little discipline with its staff. The programmes are nearly all sport or repeats. Why are we paying for it? And Glenda says, as for the anonymous BBC big name, they are innocent until proven guilty, and there shouldn't be a witch hunt. The BBC looks like they've handled this matter badly, but I'm not surprised. Well, it's true. I mean, they did name Cliff Richard immediately without even any actual proper evidence. They got into a lot of trouble for that. So maybe that's the reason why they're being a bit more careful this time. But let's move on to this one. Nigel Farage. Now, you may have heard that he had his bank accounts closed, and now military companies, banks, have been accused of threatening the UK security by refusing certain military companies' accounts. People are warning that this could cause defence services to collapse, leaving Britain exposed to foreign influence. Nigel says that the European Union is to blame for the closure of his bank account, and ministers look at plans to scrap EU laws which let banks close accounts over political views. So what do you think? Has the government actually lost control of the banks? Well, joining me to discuss, I've got Nigel Nelson and also Ben Habib. Ben Habib, I'm going to come to you. You're a banking man. You know a lot about the world of finance. Not that you don't, Nigel. It's not your forte, though, is it? Let's be honest. No, Ben, what do you think of this? Because I just want to say there was some EU legislation, but we have interpreted it in a way that is different from the EU and actually made it worse for ourselves.
Well, we often do that. We often do that. We take a bit of legislation and we gold-plate it. But I think there are a number of things to unpick here. The first is the EU method of doing business, if you like. And in the European Union, the presumption is that something shouldn't be allowed unless it's explicitly allowed. Under UK common law, everything is permissible unless it's expressly prohibited. And what's happened over 40 years of our being a member of the EU is that we've moved towards the European Union model. So you have these bizarre situations where you actually prove that you're worthy of having a bank account in the first place. They have KYC regulations, know your client. So you have to evidence to the bank that you're worthy of having a bank account. When you go for a job interview or whatever, you have to evidence that you're worthy of getting the job, beyond obviously having the capability for the job. And the politically exposed person legislation comes across. It's not legislation, by the way. It's advisory, but it comes across from the European Union on that basis. And the principle being that if you're holding office or you held high office in some kind of institution, you are more prone to bribery, and therefore there should be more questions asked of you. But banks have taken this, as you said, and they've elevated it to the point where they just decide that, in the case of Nigel Farage, it would seem, that Nigel holds views that they don't like. He's been espousing them in a manner that they don't like. And by the way, he hasn't actually held office for 3 years now.
That's true, yeah.
And they've just cancelled his bank accounts, and he's not alone. And so what we've got to do now that we've left the EU is work on the principle that people are basically honest and innocent and don't need to prove their worthiness to have a bank account unless there's an express reason that the bank has for being suspicious of them. And if they have that reason, then under the British regulatory framework, they should be obliged to disclose it.
Exactly. At least say why.
Precisely why they're doing it.
You can't just go, oh, we're not going to do that. But the other side, wasn't the particular the PEP meant to apply to people who weren't in this country? So the initial legislation was meant to be people outside this country.
I think we've
applied it internally.
It can apply to both.
But it was initially designed for people who were not in this country.
For foreign politicians, absolutely, because otherwise it's a deterrent on people going into politics. Why would you wish to go into politics, put your head in that noose, if you like, and have that level of prejudice against you? And it's prejudice. The presumption is that if you're holding office, you need to be questioned. And that's awful, isn't it?
Well, it could apply to anyone. I mean, Father Fothergill, he had his account closed because he made a comment about the whole LGBT situation and the fact that banks were getting involved in that and politicising it. Nigel?
Yeah, I mean, I met the Reverend when he was here, and I liked him very much. Yeah, on this particular one, I think what we've got here is separate issues. What has happened to Nigel is absolutely wrong, that you should not be banned from having a bank account because of your political opinions. What is happening to the defence industry sounds like banks being zealous with their ESG goals.
Correct.
Which is the environmental, social and governance.
Those things, yeah.
So what's happened here is that they're saying we don't much like defence, and that's not a good enough reason to stop defence companies having a bank account.
Can I just jump in there 1 second?
Thing, that isn't it, at the end
I just wanted to say, that's further evidence, isn't it, Nigel, of the presumption being against the permission to have an account.
Yes, and then that's the point really, that just because you're an arms trader doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't have an account. However, if on the ethical dimension that banks are adopting now, if you went for a loan, say, for a wind farm, the bank might be keener to give it to you than if you're an arms company saying, I want a loan for missiles to sell to Saudi Arabia to blow up kids in Yemen. The bank might then say, ethically, we don't fancy it. I think that is a reasonable judgment for a bank to make.
Well, it does seem a bit of overreach, though, when they're actually determining whether they like your politics or not, or whether they like...
I think it's huge overreach. I think if the entity which is applying for a loan or bank account is not breaking the law, the bank should be obliged to provide the facility.
Do you think there should not be an ethical dimension to this at all?
No, I think the ethical dimension has gone too far.
I agree with you.
We are
but there should be an ethical dimension, should there not?
Well, I don't think it is for financial institutions to judge the integrity outside the remit of the law of those that do business with the bank. I don't think it's their job.
Well, also, who are they to talk? I mean, they lend money to all sorts of people.
And this is how you get cancelled. This is how you get cancelled.
I think they're just jumping on the bandwagon of cancellation. They shouldn't be allowed. But what do you think? Get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at GBNews. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, Rishi Sunak is set to welcome Biden to the UK in the wake of the president promising cluster bombs for Ukraine. But has the US gone too far? But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you very much, Nana. I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. The male BBC presenter who is alleged to have paid a teenager tens of thousands of pounds for sexually explicit images has been suspended. The Culture Secretary says she's been assured by the BBC the claim is being investigated swiftly and sensitively. Lucy Fraser, who spoke to Director General Tim Davey, says the corporation must now be given the space to establish the facts and take appropriate action. The young person's mother told The Sun she saw a photo of him in his underwear on her child's phone. More than 1,000 people have crossed the Channel on small boats over the past 2 days. The Home Office says over 600 people were intercepted on Friday and almost 400 made the journey yesterday. Well, despite storm warnings, conditions are calm, and GB News understands that more than 200 people have already been intercepted just this morning. It brings this year's total to 12,700. The Home Office says the number of people risking their lives is unacceptable. Britain is preparing to host the US president, who's due to arrive this evening. Well, in the last hour, Joe Biden boarded Air Force One in Delaware. Tomorrow, he will meet the King at Windsor Castle. Mr Biden will then hold talks with the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, where he is expected to raise concerns about Brexit and America's decision to send cluster munitions to Ukraine. Well, Joe Biden's visit comes ahead of the NATO summit in Lithuania, where the Prime Minister will urge allies to bolster their defence spending. Speaking in Vilnius on Tuesday, Rishi Sunak is expected to say that we're seeing unprecedented security challenges. The UK remains one of the few NATO members meeting the alliance's requirement to spend at least 2% of national income on defence. That's you up to date, but you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website. That is gbnews.com. Now, though, back to Nana.
This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. On the way, Rishi Sunak is set to welcome Biden to the UK in the wake of the president promising cluster bombs to Ukraine. But before that, inspectors from the prison watchdog have branded new migrant centres in Durham inhumane. Why? Well, no Wi-Fi, a lack of hair salons. Can you believe that? We'll discuss that next.
hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
Britain's news channel.
"38 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome on board if you just joined me. Where have you been?" That's OK, it's fine. It's a long show on. We've got loads of things to discuss. It's Head to Head. I'm Nana Akua, and we're live here. But just before we went for a little break, we were talking about banks closing the accounts of certain individuals like Nigel Farage and companies for spurious reasons, and lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts. Nigel says banks have no right to close your account without telling you the reason, and the government should stop it. I agree. Why are the government not just stopping it immediately? Stephen says if the government doesn't make it a legal right for every honest person to have a bank account, they are betraying everyone. Well, it doesn't seem... There's no news there. Derek says the failure of banks to grant Nigel Farage a bank account is absolutely outrageous, undemocratic and obviously politically motivated. We need a newly formed, unbiased and democratic bank. Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? Well, you would think that we could own the banks, which we do. We did own RBS for some time, didn't we, after that whole subprime fiasco? And I think, aren't they the ones who own NatWest, who own Coops? So it just seems very odd that now... Well, anyway, hopefully... the government will pass legislation, especially since Jeremy Hunt also had an account closed. But this is a story that always captivates me when we're talking about the whole migration situation. Slow Wi-Fi. A private GP only visits twice a week and there's no hair salon. That's according to inspectors that all makes the Derwent side, I've got to say that right, removal centre in Durham inhumane. Now, the Home Office have been urged to reconsider whether it's suitable to house detainees in a remote area. So is it reasonable to accommodate people in these conditions? Well, to discuss, going head-to-head, Nigel Nelson and also Ben Habib. Nigel Nelson, is it inhumane? There's slow Wi-Fi. There's no hairdresser, no...
But the Wi-Fi is there to power the iPods, which can be used for translating purposes. So, obviously, that would be quite useful.
But it's slow, it's there. But I have slow Wi-Fi in areas of my house.
Yes, but the slowness means they can't actually use the iPads to go and do the translating.
So they're given iPads as well? They're given iPads as well? Oh, yeah. Dear. So the Wi-Fi's slow, they're given iPads as well.
When you think what these places are, they're not prisons. They are removal centres to try and get people out of the country. Because it takes so long to remove people, because we're really bad at that, they might have to stay there for 18 months. During that period, they ought to... We need to make sure that there's no unrest, and the easiest way of doing that is just show a bit of dignity. So, yes, to have a Wi-Fi there, yes, to have hair salons. I was at a hotel last week, a migrant hotel, and they've just built a sort of a temporary school for the children. These are the kind of things that you need to actually be humane.
To attract more people to come to your country illegally.
To be humane to the people who are here.
To attract more people to come to your country illegally.
Not attracting them...
I think it would do if I thought that I'm there in a tent in France, which is what you have when you're about to cross... Fending for myself, and I think, I can get slow Wi-Fi and a hair salon. I'll take it.
Free medical assistance.
And an iPad as well.
Free medical assistance, dental care, cash in your pocket.
No queue.
It's a huge deterrent coming to the UK, isn't it? Come to the UK, you're not going to get good Wi-Fi. No, I mean, the whole thing is just absolutely absurd. And we had the story the other day of illegal migrants staying in 4-star hotels in Pimlico, where it costs a few million quid to buy a house. Extraordinary. And we don't treat our own anywhere remotely as generously as we treat these people who have illegally entered the UK. Let's not forget that.
Well, they haven't illegally entered the UK.
They have illegally entered the UK.
They're asylum seekers, so they can't be illegals.
We've had this debate, Nigel.
We have, yes, I know.
And they're coming from France, which itself is beginning to look a bit like a war-torn country, but it's still a civil... I think it's accepted that France is is a civilized country. They're not coming from Syria or from Pakistan. They may have originated there, but they're coming from France. And we have to remember that.
Through other countries along the way. So it's not a French problem.
And they've also paid a lot of money to do it.
But we have to remember that.
Yeah, but it's not a French problem per se. I mean, that suggests, oh, let's send them back to France.
Why not?
Absolutely.
Why not?
Why not?
Well, all right,
Sorry.
let's turn that on its head. Why should France not introduce a system by saying to each asylum seeker, where's your destination? Oh, it's the UK. We'll get a boat and we'll take you over to the UK.
Isn't that what they're kind of doing? That's exactly
that is what you're arguing, to take them back to France, where they don't belong there in the first place.
How many would-be refugees do you see leaving UK shores to go to France? None. Why? Because the UK provides much better setup for them than France does. The whole deterrent thing isn't working because we're doing nothing to create a deterrence to come to the UK. As I've said many times on the show, the second you get into British territorial waters, you're welcomed with open arms, given a life jacket, a blanket, a cup of tea, a bar of chocolate, and whisked off to a 4-star hotel, up to Durham if you're really unfortunate. But which, by the way,
is beautiful.
Durham is beautiful, but it's been painted as some kind of dystopia for these illegal migrants.
Well, it's remote, so it's not fair.
I read that they had a ratio of 97 staff to 17 migrants in
but
one of these
there are more migrants
facilities.
on their way. I mean, in fairness, that was the idea. It wasn't just going to remain that way.
Well, we know there are more migrants on the way. We see them arriving every day.
because we're not doing enough to deal with the root causes of the problem.
The root cause of the problem is that we are not enforcing our international rights and our international legal rights to stop these boats at the point that they seek to enter our territorial waters and refuse to allow them entry. And that requires force. That requires border force to do what the name suggests, use a bit of force in our territorial waters to push these boats back into France. If these people have, of their own free will, made the decision to take that risky journey into our water, they can equally turn their boats around and go straight back to France.
Why aren't we taking them to Germany, which they may well have passed through, or Belgium, or Hungary, or any other European country they may have come through?
Well, France. That's France's problem.
No, it's not. The reason they come to Calais is to come to Britain.
Yeah, I know.
So
I got that.
So from France's point of view, it becomes our problem because they're trying to get into our country.
But, OK, answer this then, Nigel. Why did we pay France 50 million quid 2 years ago, 50 million quid 3 years ago, 55 million quid 2 years ago, 63 million quid last year, and now we've promised to pay £500 million to stop this from happening.
To try and persuade France to deal with what is essentially our problem. What we should be doing, is trying to get returns agreements back into place. They did work back in 2018, 2019, before we left the EU.
What, the Dublin?
Yes,
the net number of illegal... 36. Well done.
Well, no, actually,
36 people were sent back on that agreement.
In 2018, the number of people who crossed by boat was 297. The number of people we sent back to European countries under Dublin was 125. 1 in 3 went back to Europe.
But, Nigel, over the 4-year period before we Brexited, as Nana absolutely correctly just said, 36 net went back to Europe. That was it under the Dublin Agreement.
Yeah, but
we would still be...
I've just given you figures that showed 125 went back.
In 1 year.
When the figures were much smaller.
Yeah, well, 125 isn't really very many at all.
No, it's not, but it's 1 in 3 of the ones who came over.
Yeah, but...
This problem will not stop until we stop it in the Channel. And we've got to take a firm position on it. We've got to develop some political will to defend our borders. This is an invasion. It is an invasion. There's no other way to describe it. And Suella Braverman's absolutely right to do it. Now she needs to take robust physical action in the Channel. That's what we need.
Well, what about the cruise ship nation then? I think I would be... well, why not cruise ships in the Channel, or to stop people from actually, when they get to across our waters, they go straight into cruise ship and then we process them from there? What's wrong with that idea? Cruise ships, people pay to get on those.
whether you put them on a cruise ship or you process them on land, they can't actually claim asylum under the law until they reach British territory.
Okay,
so that's the first thing.
Well, so they're in the cruise ship, we can do the processing there, can't
your
you?
processing idea is absolutely right. The quicker we process people
on the cruise ship rather than them coming on, so you actually have a set of cruise ships out there. Not only would it act as a
you have to be physically on British land to claim asylum. So not on the cruise ship.
But if you're on a cruise ship, can you not have your asylum claim processed in the cruise ship? If you're on British
it's a
waters,
British ship, it won't be under British law.
You're on British waters. So if you have cruise ships, I would literally. I know some people will say, "Oh, that's really inhumane," but no, I wouldn't. I'd be there, ready to receive people as they come across, and I'd put them in the cruise ships. They wouldn't even come onto British soil, as in terra firma. They'd stay on British waters. They'd be on the cruise ship. I'd process them quickly.
I don't know if you'd have to change the law for that. I'm not sure whether you'd have to change the law for that. Why can you not process people quickly? And then if they are not meant to be here, then you can simply take them back on a ship or whatever it is from there to where they need to go. Well, I mean, I don't know whether legally you would need a change in the law to actually put to process an asylum seeker offshore. At the moment,
but it's still British territory. I don't see why. I mean, this would be
if they're on a British ship, they will be subject to British law.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case, I'm not against anything that would actually make processing them quicker.
But would you not be complaining that the Wi-Fi might not be that good on the ship, or the room might not be big enough, or they might not have a salon on board, or maybe there's two to a room?
Well, they probably have hair salons on board if they're using a cruise ship.
Exactly. Why
and
don't
if
we
the
do
Wi-Fi was rubbish, you just go back to the operators.
So we agree. Cruise ships are maybe the way forward. That's what they say. Right. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. Moving on to this one, Rishi Sunak has condemned the use of cluster bombs following Joe Biden's commitment to send the munitions to Ukraine. Now, this comes as the Prime Minister will be welcoming the US President to the UK to compare notes on the war effort. Now, many NATO allies prohibit the use of cluster bombs, and for good reason. But Ukraine says the weapons would help save the lives of Ukrainian soldiers. But has the US gone too far? Should we be going along with this one? Nigel, cluster bombs, a bit...
I'm really uncomfortable with this, that we're signatory to a ban by 123 countries for cluster bombs, so we shouldn't even be manufacturing them. So on that basis, then, we shouldn't have any to give to Ukraine in the first place. I can understand the difficulty President Biden's in because the Ukrainians, President Zelensky himself, asked for them.
He's asked for them specifically.
And the people who will be hurt by them will be Ukrainian citizens there when they don't go off and suddenly someone steps on them and they do go off at some stage in the future. I just think that is probably going too far. I appreciate the problems that Zelensky is facing with the arms he needs. What we need to do is redouble our efforts to give him the arms that he wants, but something that is actually a bit more humane than a cluster bomb.
What's more humane than a cluster bomb, a nuclear bomb? What's humane? None of it's humane.
None of it's humane, but a cruise missile is probably...
It's inhumane.
Is a cruise... Well, any weapon that kills people... Any weapon that kills people is inhumane, but cluster bombs, because they're particularly cruel and particularly dangerous to civilians, are banned. A cruise missile is not, for instance.
Well, that's all right, then. Zelensky's asking for it, though. That's what he's asking for.
Well, I think it's completely wrong that we would trade our principles in order to prosecute this proxy war that's going on between the US and the UK on one side through Ukraine against Russia in Ukrainian territory. And I think it says volumes that Biden is prepared to provide cluster bombs. You know, this is how...
Well, Zelensky's asked for them, though, and he's providing what's been asked.
But it is, as Nigel rightly says, it is largely citizens who get killed by these bombs. And I think it says a number of things on the geopolitical front, the most prominent of which is that spring offensive that the Ukrainians were going to mount against Russia never emerged. And Russia seems to be doing better than we're being told. Otherwise, you wouldn't contemplate weapons like this. We're contemplating these weapons because actually the way the war's being fought by Zelensky, supported by the US and the UK at the moment, is not succeeding. And we've got to be very careful.
But aren't the Russians also using cluster bombs anyway?
They use them as well.
I mean, they use... But two wrongs don't make a right.
Well, yeah, but I suppose he wants to equalise what one side is using, but then there'll be...
And the Ukrainians have used them too, in fairness, but they've run out of them.
But it's the Ukrainian citizens who get killed. And
but they've all been using them, so he's obviously... That ship has sailed has been concerned about the amount of...
Yeah, but I just don't see how, if someone's using phosphorus bombs or napalm, that justifies the other side using it.
Well, they'll probably be allowed, wouldn't they, the way
I just want to just finish on the geopolitical point, which is really important. If Russia isn't losing this war, as we keep getting told, if Russia is able to hold its position and then come out from southeastern regions of Ukraine back into Ukraine, we need to be very, very careful. If this provision...
What is worrying for us?
Well, I think we could lose the war. You know, it says, I think one of the messages not getting across with the provision of these cluster bombs is that the weaponry that we were using isn't succeeding, says to me Russia is making progress in its war aims, and we need to make sure we don't end up with a resurgent Russia coming through Ukraine.
But what about Prigozhin then, if that's what you're saying? Because we've had that situation where obviously Russians seem to be turning on Russians. He was sort of exiled to Belarus, but I don't know whether he's actually gone. That is surely a sign of weakness with regard to the Russian army. That can't be.
Yeah, I don't doubt for a second that they've got all sorts of schisms and divisions in the Russian setup. But Russia is not going to give up on this war. Russia is going to keep fighting this war inhumanely and increasingly inhumanely if necessary.
So what's the problem with the cluster bombs then, if that's the case? I mean, Nigel, as Nigel said, if they need them and they're going to carry on fighting irrespective of, you know, whether it's humane or inhumane...
Well, you're turning this into Vietnam. This is turning into a Vietnam, and that's not where we should be.
I mean, certainly Britain shouldn't get involved in this, and I think Rishi Sunak is right to have a conversation with President Biden when he arrives tomorrow and say, look, we are not in favour of what you're doing.
Well, that's interesting you say that, but ultimately, then what is your suggestion then, Nigel?
Well, I think we've got to...
Then what?
But, you know, none of us are aware in this country what our war aim is, the UK's aim in this war. What is it? Is it to push Russia completely out of Ukraine? If that's the aim, then say so, because we're not explicit on it. And actually, if we are funding this war...
Zelensky, what his aim is, and I think that is to capture or keep all Ukrainian territories.
But what is in the British interest here? Is it in our interest to take the war to that nth level? I think we, the British people, need to know what the British position is in Ukraine.
Is it in our interest then to carry on with this? You've got about 20 seconds on it.
Yes, it is. But the important thing is the war has to be restricted to Ukraine and not go across borders where we will be involved in a war with Russia.
Well, keep your thoughts coming. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Still to come, Nana's vagina monologue. Because according to reports, health professionals are urged to call vaginas bonus holes. Yes, you heard it here first. That is on the way. But first, it's time to get your weather.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, further showers and longer spells of rain over the next few days. There will be some sunshine though, but for many of us it will feel fresher. And the reason for this is this area of low pressure. It's been around over the last few days, just sat to the west of us, but over the coming few days it actually spreads towards us and increases the risk of showers and longer spells of rain even more. This evening we do have thundery showers across the UK, but they will start to fade away, and then most places overnight we'll see clear skies, though towards the early hours we could see some showers moving back into southwestern parts of the UK. Temperatures generally the low to mid-teens, so a little fresher than recent nights, but still quite warm for the time of year. Monday morning gets off to a dry start for many, plenty of sunny spells, though the cloud quickly thickens from the southwest. This area of rain pushes north-eastwards through the day, turning heavy at times, particularly across Wales, into the Midlands, northwest England too. Elsewhere we'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers, and the best of the sunshine towards the southeast. We could see highs around 24 or 25 Celsius. Elsewhere generally the high teens to low 20s. That area of rain across North Wales, northern England, continues to push further north as we head through the evening, and then further spells of rain push into southern parts of the UK as we move into the early hours. This could be heavy at times, so overnight a lot of cloud around outbreaks of rain, and that will keep temperatures up generally a little higher, 14 to 17 degrees across much of the country. So it means a cloudy, wet start for many Tuesday morning, heavy showers already, but it should brighten up as we move through the morning into the afternoon, but that will trigger a few heavy showers too. Over the next few days it remains unsettled as that low pressure stays in charge, further showers and longer spells of rain and temperatures around average.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. Don't forget you can get in touch, gbnews@.com, or tweet us at GB News. Loads still to come, plus my vagina monologue. You won't want to miss that. And my panellists will be joining me in a couple of moments' time. Stay tuned. Hello, good afternoon. It's just gone 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next 2 hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly and also political commentator Amy Nicole Turner. But before we get started, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you very much, Nana. I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. The BBC has suspended the male presenter accused of paying a teenager tens of thousands of pounds for explicit images. That's after it emerged the young person's mother told the Sun she saw a photo of the man in his underwear on her child's phone. The Director General, Tim Davie, has confirmed the BBC was aware of a complaint in May and has been investigating the case ever since. In a statement, he also condemned the unsubstantiated rumours being made on the internet about some of the corporations presenting talent. More than 1,000 people have crossed the channel on small boats over the past 2 days. The Home Office says over 600 people were intercepted on Friday and almost 400 made the journey yesterday. Well, despite storm warnings, conditions are calm, and GB News understands more than 200 people have already been intercepted this morning. It brings this year's total to 12,700. The Home Office says the number of people risking their lives is unacceptable. Britain is preparing to host the US president, who's due to arrive this evening. Joe Biden boarded Air Force One in Delaware and is now on his way to Stansted Airport. Well, tomorrow he will meet the King at Windsor Castle before holding talks with the Prime Minister at Downing Street. He's expected to raise concerns about Brexit and America's decision to send cluster munitions to Ukraine. Well, Joe Biden's visit comes ahead of the NATO summit in Lithuania, where the Prime Minister will urge allies to bolster their defence spending. Speaking in Vilnius on Tuesday, Rishi Sunak is expected to say that we're seeing unprecedented security challenges. The UK remains one of the few NATO members meeting the alliance's requirement to spend at least 2% of national income on defence. More than 700 firearms have been seized in the UK by the National Crime Agency. Forces have been working with police in Spain to stop guns, which can be easily converted, from entering the UK. In 11 cases, firearms were sent to people with mental health issues, and 7 involved people with extremist views. The NCA says 74 people have been arrested, resulting in 50 convictions over the past 5 years. Just Stop Oil has denied any involvement in the stunt at the former Chancellor's wedding yesterday. The group posted a video of a woman throwing orange confetti at George Osborne and his wife, Thea Rogers, but it's now saying it was not responsible. Just Stop Oil, however, applauded the move, which generated publicity for its cause. The Chancellor is set to outline so-called evolutionary pension reforms to boost economic growth. Jeremy Hunt plans to make changes to pension funds, encouraging investors to support fast-growing businesses. Well, in a speech tomorrow, he's expected to say the changes will be gradual, not drastic. The government says the aim is to help savers, pension schemes and the UK. Concerns have been raised about the thousands of displaced Ukrainians who are still in temporary accommodation in Scotland. The Liberal Democrats say more than 3,000 Ukrainians are still in hotels and around 700 are on board the MS Victoria cruise ship. The party says progress has been slow and it criticised the lack of resources. The government says it's working on longer-term housing. And the Met Office is warning off more heavy showers and thunderstorms. It's after rain and storms disrupted major sporting events such as Wimbledon and the Ashes yesterday. The Met Office is predicting prolonged heavy rain in Scotland, while Northern Ireland faces strong winds, hail and even potential flooding. Heavy showers are also expected to hit Wales, the Midlands and South West England. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Rory. Just give you a quick update on that breaking news. This is GB News, by the way. If you've just tuned in, I'm Nana Akua. It's fast approaching 6 minutes after 4 o'clock. We brought you the news in the last hour that the BBC have confirmed that the unnamed male presenter has been suspended. The presenter is alleged to have paid thousands of pounds to a teenager in exchange for explicit sexual images. So let's quickly cross over to Broadcasting House and get the latest from our political reporter, Olivia Utley. Olivia, so can you give us an update? Now, we know with regard to the fact that the BBC presenter has been suspended.
Yes, the BBC has finally suspended the presenter, but it feels today very much as though the spotlight is now on the BBC. Why didn't it act sooner? These allegations were raised in the middle of May. We're 2 months on from that now. And in all this time, up until yesterday, the presenter in question has been on air. Now, the BBC says that it has processes to deal with allegations of this kind. And originally, when the complaint was made, it simply didn't have enough information to progress. It says that new information has come to light in the last few days, and that is why the presenter has now been suspended. But the mother who first made the complaint, the mother of the alleged victim, says that she came forward 2 months ago, and 2 days later she saw the presenter in question on air, and she says that after she had spoken to the BBC with her problem, she then discovered that the presenter in question had sent more money to her child, suggesting to her that the BBC hadn't raised the issue with its employee. So now we're hearing lots of politicians weigh in from all sides of the political spectrum. We had Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves this morning saying it was a disgrace and that the process just simply wasn't quick enough. Priti Patel, former Home Secretary and darling of the Tory right, said that broadcasting gods are given too much leeway, and the BBC, a taxpayer-funded organisation, has become a nameless and faceless organisation. Now, that's pretty strong stuff when you're hearing it both from Labour and from the Conservatives. And of course, today there's been a meeting between Lucy Fraser, the Culture Secretary, and Tim Davie, the Director General of the BBC. The presenter has now been suspended, but will that simply be too little, too late? And we still, of course, don't know who it is.
Well, Olivia, thank you for that, and we'll keep you updated with all of that. That's Olivia Utley, she's our GB News political reporter. Well, in a note sent to the BBC staff, the BBC's Director General Tim Davie confirmed the suspension and went on to add, by law, individuals are entitled to a reasonable expectation of privacy, which is making this situation more complex. I also want to be very clear that I am wholly condemning the unsubstantiated rumours being made on the internet about some of our presenting talent. We are in contact with the family referenced in the media reports, and I want to assure you that we are working rapidly to establish the facts and to ensure that these matters are handled fairly and with care, including by external authorities where appropriate. Right, so it's coming up to 9 minutes after 4 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. I like to call this Nana's Vagina Monologue, or my bonus hole. You think I'm joking? Listen, I'm deadly serious. It's been called many things in the past, but never that. Bonus hole is actually the latest euphemism for a vagina. And this time, the brilliant mind that came up with it in their section of the website, which was called Language to Use When Supporting Trans Men or Non-Binary People, was the cancer charity Joe's Cervical Cancer Trust. So let's not worry about offending women who are comfortable in their own skin, which is the majority. Let's make sure that we don't offend some very confused people. The charity went further and also suggested front hole as another acceptable term. So, alongside chest feeder, people who menstruate and the inclusion of people who identify as women in the dictionary definition of woman, we biological women, which I find annoying having to include the term biological as it may suggest I have submitted to the notion that there is any other kind of actual woman, now have to contend with new phrases for the vagina to disassociate it from biological sex so those who want to deny reality can deny it. Of all the dehumanising nonsense that we women have to put up with, this one takes the biscuit. How ridiculous. I mean, what's wrong with just calling it a vagina? Must we all be ashamed of the truth? Kelly J. Keane, a prominent campaigner for women's rights and founder for Standing for Women, said, "The whole thing is loathsome, but bonus hole and front hole are so misogynistic. If a woman is so triggered by the word vagina, I should imagine she needs psychiatric help rather than the world bent to her never-ending list of irrational demands." I agree. And we women and our vaginas go through a lot, like menstruation and childbirth. Let's see whether the bonus hole brings a boy or a girl, or something else. Julie Bindle wrote in the Daily Mail today, "As a feminist campaigner, I am appalled. I've spent time over the decades trying to raise awareness among women about our bodies. I've encouraged women to unlearn the shame associated with our biology, so the idea that we should stop referring to the vagina by its name is grossly offensive." Hear, hear, Julie. Bev Jackson from the LGB Alliance also chipped in. Disgusting language like this, which intentionally dehumanises women, must be rejected by all reasonable people. The fact is, women have vaginas. It's appalling that anyone would think that the reality is offensive. And if you think that it's offensive, then that's your problem. Exactly. It shouldn't be my problem. This is not an anti-trans issue. It's none of my business what someone identifies as. That's up to them, each to their own. The problem I have with this is why must my language be diminished, eroded beyond all recognition? Why is it always women who lose out? I note that there is no attempt to rename the penis. So before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up today. For the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the BBC reveal the identity of presenter X? The BBC have confirmed that the unnamed male presenter, who has been accused of paying a teenager tens of thousands of pounds for explicit images, has been suspended. But is it in the public interest to know who this well-known figure is? Then stay tuned at 4:50, it's Worldview. I'll be heading to Moscow, speaking to Russian journalist Alexei Vir to get all the latest. Also, on the US President Joe Biden's decision to send controversial weapons to Ukraine, we'll head over to Paul Dudridge for the Politics People podcast. And then at 5, it's this week's Outside. Now, I'll be joined by a very special mystery guest who is named to have had a hairdressing empire. He's also a stylist to the stars. Can anyone guess who that might be? Well, that's on the way in the next hour. As ever, tell me what you think on everything we're discussing. Email gbviews@gbnews.com or tweet me at gbnews. Right, let's get started. Let's welcome again to my panel broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also political commentator Amy Nicole-Turner. She's Turner for one day only. But so welcome aboard, Amy. It's nice to see you.
It's very nice to see you.
I love your outfit as well. We sort of match a bit, don't we?
We're feeling bright today.
Yes, feeling bright, apart from the thing on the end. Oh, Danny, we love you.
Amy, get used to this. I'm her punching bag, which I quite enjoy, actually. I don't mind that at all.
Really lovely. We love you, Danny.
I love you.
There's a lot of you to love. Right. So, Amy, so what do you think of this, then? Bonus hole, come on.
Nana, saying bonus hole does not erase your vagina. We can say both. And this is taken completely out of context because the source of this, it was for trans men. Trans men disproportionately do not go for cervical smears. So it was in a pamphlet aimed at trans men. And this is just a little bit of education about the latest slang. And apparently, in the trans community, it's sometimes called a bonus hole. We have had plenty of names ourselves over the years.
Look, come on.
But we've only just started saying vagina. How many names? Foof, downstairs, bits, tuppence, front, bottom.
Bonus hole? I don't think so.
If only I knew I was to compile a list of slang for vagina, I'd have been more prepared. Bonus hole is the sort of thing that, you know, teenage lads would say, you know, on their way home from school. I think it's a remarkable statement. Obviously, I'm
disrespectful.
Well, I'm not a woman, so I can't feel disrespected by it. I don't have a personal investment in the story. The only thing I can think of as a bloke looking into all of this madness is that is pure lunacy.
We weren't the audience for this pamphlet.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant.
But it's a part of this movement, though. It's a little tiny bit. It's a little part of the movement that alienates, I'd say, over 95% of women. Again, I'm not a woman, so I can't feel alienated personally by it. But I know Nana feels alienated. My mother, who's in her 80s, she feels alienated by it too. And I haven't spoken at length to every woman I know, but I would suggest that they're all getting fed up with it.
I think in the space of cervical screening, someone that has been alienated is a trans man. And all this is to include trans men in the conversation because, as I've said already, they need cervical smears too.
Yeah, but there's no need to exclude everybody else out of it.
It's not. There's plenty of information out there for us and our you know, what do we want to call them?
Yeah, but I'm talking about the erosion of the language, the actual language that associates...
It's just adding another one.
No, but, Amy, I'm talking about the disassociation of the actual vagina with the fact that it's a sexual thing which relates you to being a woman. And that is the problem. I think the reason why these people are using this kind of terminology is to disassociate the reality from their biology, that they are women. And I think it's all part of the movement, the trans movement, to do that. And that is the issue here.
But a trans man is not a woman. A trans man would feel dysphoric calling what there is their vagina. So isn't it within the interests of them, their health, their well-being, that if they want to use a slang term, they can, just as we can own our bodies and call our bodies whatever. I won't call my boobs John and Edward.
I'm not fully up on that. A trans man is a biological woman. That is a woman. I mean, even if you, like, you can say that you are a woman and you want to be called a woman and everything, but you cannot take away the biology of the situation.
Well,
that's why they have a bonus hole, because they are...
They don't live as...
Well, how do you live as a woman? How does a woman live? How would you define it? Someone says, OK, I want to live as a woman. How does a woman live?
Gender is something that you know. A child knows their gender, and sometimes that isn't exactly what is assigned at birth.
No, but that's not the answer.
And you have to
the
respect that. And that's something that's recognised by the British Medical Association, the Royal College of Psychiatry.
No, but that's all very well. But what is a woman then?
It's not for me to tell someone whether they're a woman or a man
what is a woman?
based on their gender.
But what is a woman?
It's something that's beyond, in some cases, in some rare cases, what your bits say.
Which is what? How do they know they're a woman if they can't define it? What is a woman? Adult female? Adult female?
Danny, you're not getting a look in here.
Well, if you're saying that, I'm saying great, but what is a woman then? If they're identifying as it, what is it?
I would say, how do you know you're straight? How do you know you're gay? How do you know you're anything? You know your own identity. You know you're gay if you're attracted to the same sex as you, and there we come back to biology. So if I was gay, I'd be attracted to a woman. But what is a woman? So
if it's
how do you know you're a woman?
Well, I know I'm a woman because I'm an adult female.
And
That's how I know.
There are other
so you're
women.
saying they're not adult females, which they are.
I'm saying that trans man knows that they are a man as much as you know you're a woman.
No, I know I'm a woman because I'm an adult female.
Nana knows she's a woman. She mentioned a bonus hole in the monologue. She knows all about...
She knows she doesn't have a bonus hole. And I don't have a bonus hole.
I don't know what that is. A bonus hole is some sort of thing.
It is a bonus hole, apparently. Now, look, again, as a bloke who doesn't...
If you're a trans man...
Do you know what? The great thing about the late Jerry Springer was that he introduced polygraph lie detectors.
Yes.
And I would love people who maintain that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. I don't think they're being genuine. I think they just talk a great game.
I can absolutely assure you that the British Medical Association...
No, but I'm talking about individuals, not bodies. I'm talking about... OK, I'm not going to call you a liar because you're not a liar, but I would love to know if we...
recognised by globally, internationally, by science...
Because you're an incredibly compassionate individual. That seeps through every bonus hole in your body. But I'd love just to strap you up and ask you a direct question. Can a man be a woman and can a woman be a man? And just to see if the polygraph says yes.
I hear you.
Do you see what I mean? Because I think they know that they're not telling the truth.
See, I find that incredibly baffling. I can't believe you see it in such a binary.
This is GB News on TV, online and digital radio, still to come. This week's Outside, my special mystery guest is the king of hairdressing, an empire that he had. He opened his first salon with celebrity hairdresser John Frieda. Any guesses? First, let's get an update with your weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, further showers and longer spells of rain over the next few days. There will be some sunshine though, but for many of us it will feel fresher. And the reason for this is this area of low pressure. It's been around over the last few days, just sat to the west of us, but over the coming few days it actually spreads towards us and increases the risk of showers and longer spells of rain even more. This evening we do have thundery showers across the UK, but they will start to fade away, and then most places overnight we'll see clear skies, though towards the early hours we could see some showers moving back into southwestern parts of the UK. Temperatures generally the low to mid-teens, so a little fresher than recent nights, but still quite warm for the time of year. Monday morning gets off to a dry start for many, plenty of sunny spells, though the cloud quickly thickens from the southwest. This area of rain pushes northeastwards through the day, turning heavy at times, particularly across Wales into the Midlands, northwest England too. Elsewhere we'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers, and the best of the sunshine towards the southeast. We could see highs around 24 or 25 Celsius. Elsewhere generally the high teens to low 20s. That area of rain across North Wales, northern England, continues to push further north as we head through the evening, and then further spells of rain push into southern parts of the UK as we move into the early hours. This could be heavy at times, so overnight a lot of cloud around, outbreaks of rain, and that will keep temperatures up generally a little higher, 14 to 17 degrees across much of the country. So it means a cloudy, wet start for many Tuesday morning, heavy showers already, but it should brighten up as we move through the morning into the afternoon, but that will trigger a few heavy showers too. Over the next few days, it remains unsettled as that low pressure stays in charge. Further showers and longer spells of rain and temperatures around average.
That warm feeling inside. From boxed boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Welcome on board if you just tuned in. 22 minutes after 4 o'clock. Still to come, Worldview. I'll be heading to Moscow to speak to Russian journalist Alexei Vir to get the latest on US President Joe Biden's decision to send controversial weapons to Ukraine. But up next, it's the Great British Debate, and I'm asking, should the BBC reveal the identity of presenter X? Good afternoon, welcome on board. This is GB News, I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should the BBC reveal the identity of presenter X? The BBC have confirmed that the unnamed male presenter, who has been accused of paying a teenager tens of thousands of pounds for explicit images, has been suspended. Now, this comes as urgent talks have taken place today. That's between the Culture Secretary and the BBC Director General, which is Tim Davie, as the ongoing scandal threatens to consume the corporation. And according to reports in The Sun, the mother of the teenager said that she was shocked after being shown screenshots of the video chat between her child and the presenter in question. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the BBC reveal the identity of presenter X? I'm joined now by Michael Cole. He's the former BBC Royal correspondent, Suzanne Evans, political commentator, Nigel Nelson, senior GBNews political commentator, and Ben Habib, former Brexit Party MEP. Well, I'm going to start immediately with you, Michael Cole. You were a former BBC Royal correspondent. What's your view on, firstly, the way that it seems that they're keeping something quiet? Obviously, they don't have the details, but do you think they're doing the right thing?
BBC cannot name anybody without running the very real risk of prejudicing any future prosecution and legal case that may arise. Under the Protection of Children Act of 1978, several felonies have been committed here. Of course, an accusation is not proof, and there has to be due process. But it would be wrong, completely wrong, for any names to be mentioned. You can see from Tim Davies' statement, he sounds very worried. The BBC will be sucking its teeth and wondering what's going on. Obviously, they've got in the back of their minds the names of Jimmy Savile and Rolf Harris. They want to do things right, but the wrong thing now would be to name anybody. That would be down to the Crown Prosecution Service, the police. What they may be doing is talking to the person concerned and seeing what way ahead there is.
Well, of course, Michael, there's no suggestion that this is anything similar to any of those that you've just mentioned. So, so we must be careful not to conflate anything with regard to that. Let's go to Suzanne Evans. She's a political commentator. Suzanne.
Yes, I absolutely agree with Michael. The BBC can't and shouldn't name this person. I'm finding I'm getting increasingly concerned in this day and age that the principle, the very, very strong and vital principle of innocent until proven guilty, is being gradually eroded away as more and more people are being convicted before they even go anywhere near a police cell in the court of public opinion. This is only an allegation. By all accounts, the allegations have been made by someone who seems to have various issues and problems. I think we have a situation here where it's only an allegation at this stage until the police have got involved, until anyone is arrested and charged. Then I think that person, as difficult as it might be for some people to stomach, but nevertheless has the right to privacy. It's an allegation. We cannot have a situation where people in the public eye, or indeed anybody, can be outed and named and shamed for the basis of one story that's been run in a newspaper that doesn't appear to be any police interest in, or in that basis evidence for at the moment.
Well, Suzanne, it's interesting you say that.
Very dangerous situation here.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the police. Ben Habib, you had thoughts on that?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's not going to be much of a debate, because I agree with Michael and Suzanne on the principle of innocent until proven guilty and not to do anything that prejudices any unfolding investigation. But it is interesting to me that the mother, her first port of call, it would seem, would be to go to the press as opposed to the police. If I had a child who had been subjected to the kind of treatment that she alleges, the first place I would go is make a criminal complaint. And only if the police weren't doing their job would I feel the necessity, perhaps, to, blow the thing out of the water by going to the media. But I think we've got to be very careful not to put people on trial, through the media. And we have seen cases where that's gone disastrously wrong. And, I think we've just got to have this principle of innocent until proven guilty firmly in our minds.
Well, we saw what happened with the whole Cliff Richard incident. Nigel Nelson.
Yeah, I mean, an hour ago, I'd have agreed with all three of you. I think that when an allegation is made, that it stays as an allegation, and certainly whoever the alleged perpetrator is should not be named. Now the BBC have taken action and suspended him, I feel rather differently, that on that basis, then, we're all going to know the name anyway, because it'll become obvious if he's been taken off air who it is. So on the basis of that, I think, yes, now is the time to actually name him.
But what about the point that Michael made, that it could actually prejudice some sort of claim or some sort of case further ahead?
Well, I mean, the prejudice issue applies to everything, even if the police were involved. Do you then name at arrest? Do you name on charge? Or do you only name on conviction? One of the arguments has been that people are actually named, so if there are other victims, they feel they can come forward.
I understand you shouldn't name until you're charged. I think until the point of charging, I think you're obliged to keep it.
No, you can be named if you're arrested, but
you can you?
I think the issue here is that mistakes are made. Somebody has been suspended on the basis of an allegation, and I'm 100% with Ben. My first thought on reading this story was, why has the mother gone to the press and not gone to the police? That is a shocking dereliction, I would say, of your duty as a parent. If and she was talking about how, I don't want to push the blame onto her, by the way, but she was talking about how she wants this man to stop sending money so that her husband her son gets off crack cocaine. Well, what a ridiculous way to go.
I'm going to stop you there, Suzanne, because we don't know we don't know the gender of the child actually involved. Thank you very much, Sir Michael Cole, former BBC Royal correspondent, Suzanne Evans, political commentator, Nigel Nelson, GBNews senior political commentator, and Ben Habib, former Brexit Party MEP. Thank you so much. The BBC spokesperson said on Friday, we treat any allegations very seriously and we have processes in place to proactively deal with them. As part of that, if we receive information that requires further investigation or examination, we will take steps to do this. Now, that includes actively attempting to speak to those who have contacted us in order to seek further detail and understanding of the situation. If we get no reply to our attempts or receive no further contact, that can limit our ability to progress things. It does not mean our inquiries stop. If at any point new information comes to light or is proved, including via newspapers, this will be acted upon appropriately in line with the internal processes. Right, well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. After the break, we will continue with the Great British Debate. I'm asking, should the BBC reveal the identity of presenter X? You'll hear the thoughts of my panel. But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you very much, Nana. The BBC has suspended the male presenter accused of paying a teenager tens of thousands of pounds for explicit images. That's after it emerged the young person's mother told the Sun she saw a photo of the man in his underwear on her child's phone. The Director General, Tim Davie, has confirmed the BBC was aware of a complaint in May and has been investigating the case ever since. In a statement, he also condemned the unsubstantiated rumours being made on the internet about some of the corporations presenting talent. Britain is preparing to host the US president, who's due to arrive this evening. Joe Biden has boarded Air Force One in Delaware and is now on his way to Stansted Airport. Well, tomorrow he will meet the King at Windsor Castle before holding talks with the Prime Minister at Downing Street. He's expected to raise concerns about Brexit and America's decision to send cluster munitions to Ukraine. Well, Joe Biden's visit comes ahead of the NATO summit in Lithuania, where the Prime Minister will urge allies to bolster their defence spending. Speaking in Vilnius on Tuesday, Rishi Sunak is expected to say that we're seeing unprecedented security challenges. The UK remains one of the few NATO members meeting the alliance's requirement to spend at least 2% of national income on defence. And more than 1,000 people have crossed the channel on small boats over the past 2 days. The Home Office says over 600 people were intercepted on Friday and almost 400 made the journey yesterday. Well, despite storm warnings, conditions are calm, and GBNews understands more than 200 people have already been intercepted this morning. That brings this year's total to 12,700. The Home Office says the number of people risking their lives is unacceptable. That's the latest, but you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website. That is gbnews.com. Now, though, back to Nana.
Thank you, Rory. If you just joined me, welcome on board. This is GB News. On the way, our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should the BBC reveal the identity of presenter X? The BBC have confirmed the unnamed presenter who was accused of paying a teenager tens of thousands of pounds for explicit images has been suspended. That's on the way next. My panel will be joining me. Don't go anywhere. Good afternoon, this is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua, live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should the BBC reveal the identity of presenter X? Now, I can say right now on the website, online, there's a poll right now, and about 91% of you so far say that actually we should. The BBC have confirmed that the unnamed male presenter, who's been accused of paying a teenager tens of thousands of pounds for explicit images, has been suspended. Now, this comes as urgent talks have taken place today between the Culture Secretary and the BBC Director General as the ongoing scandal threatens to consume the corporation. And according to reports in The Sun, the mother of the teenager said that she was shocked after being shown screenshots of a video chat between her child and the presenter in question. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should the BBC reveal the identity of presenter X? Well, let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined by author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. I'm going to start with you, Danny Kelly, because I know you always love to talk about the BBC.
Ex-BBC, top presenter in the Midlands, 15 years.
Who's that?
Replaced because I was a white middle-aged bloke for a diversity tick. I know the BBC inside out.
Have they actually said that to you? That's why you were replaced?
I was told that 6 weeks before.
You were told, but by them?
By my boss, yeah.
OK, so
by my
that's
line
fair
manager.
enough.
Because London wanted the lineup radio station. London wanted the lineup to reflect the diversity of Birmingham.
OK.
And it was just full of white people. So, yeah, I was told that. And I was the only freelancer, so everyone else had staff rights, so they booted me off. Anyway, so I know the BBC, and I know how they handle scandals. I myself was suspended for a week. Nothing to do with anything like this.
Why were you suspended?
Because I announced in a joke that Queen Elizabeth II had died. It was a joke, and we played the national anthem below the on the bed with the announcement in the afternoon.
But you should know. Listen, everybody knows. Everybody knows on announcement of any. The BBC has a very strict obit procedure, which is what they call it.
Yeah, it was a mess.
I know, because I used to work there as well. There's a very strict obit procedure, and you do not mess with the obit procedure on any level ever, especially with members of the royal family.
Correct, you're right, and I got suspended for a week. But my point is that there were about 15 managers involved in that decision. There was the management in Birmingham, so my immediate boss, the boss of the station, the boss of the regions, dealing with people on a local level in London, and at the time it was the Director General, I can't remember his name. And the process took about 48 hours, and I was suspended. So the BBC do these things at an incredibly, almost glacial pace. And
when you say glacial, do you mean slow?
Yes,
you said within 48 hours. That's not slow.
Well, they could have just suspended me at the end of a show.
But this is interesting because the lady says, and there's nothing to confirm the claim. I mean, maybe it is that she approached them in May, and that's really slow. Whereas yours is 48 hours, which I'd say is quite quick.
Oh well, that's your view.
No, it's not my view. 48 hours
you're
over 2
saying
months.
It's quite quick, and that's your opinion.
No, it's not a view.
Other people say
no. I'm actually giving you factual stuff. You said it took 48 hours for them to suspend you.
And you say it's quick.
And I'm saying that's quick in comparison.
Interesting opinion.
It's not an opinion. It's in comparison. In comparison to the fact that apparently they had this information about this person in May, and we are now in June.
Well,
July.
I'll answer that because they're investigating the veracity of it.
I suppose
mine was on tape. Mine was on tape. They knew what I'd said.
I guess
I don't think that. I think
it's
very slow.
Extremely careful in this instance because the key word at the moment is accused.
But they could
nobody
act more
has
quickly,
been
wouldn't you think?
found guilty of anything. So I think the BBC have to do a very thorough investigation before anything is confirmed, because you know where false accusations can end.
And we're living in the aftermath of Carl
reputation.
Beach, that fantasist who ruined so many people's lives by saying there was a VIP pedo.
Yeah, but hang on, wait. But a thorough investigation. If you're given something of that ilk, say, in May, then you would think that having taken that, you would look at that and investigate and start investigating right there and then. And by the sounds of it, it doesn't sound like they did very much in between. That's what it's coming across as.
But, OK, you could almost argue, what's it got to do with the BBC?
Well, if they're
Mine was an announcement on air,
if
so
they're
that was
told
obvious.
that one of their presenters may be doing something and that this person was...
Out of office hours?
No, that's irrelevant.
But
This
I guess
person was young at the time and they've provided some images or anything like that, then they are obliged to act immediately, especially if it's with somebody who may have been a minor.
They might not necessarily be doing something illegal, but they are doing something that could bring the reputation of the BBC into disrepute. So I guess it's like in the past when on-air presenters have had, say, drug scandals, and it impacts the reputation of the broadcaster.
Yeah.
So that's why you think the BBC would want to be hot-footing it to get to the bottom of this,
before they go to someone like the Sun.
themselves.
But Nana,
well, yeah.
If it's not true, then you suspend somebody, and the greatest tenet of British I believe legislation is you are innocent until proven guilty.
Yeah, but I'm not saying they should suspend him. I'm saying that they should act more quickly when provided some sort of information like that. Even if it turns out to be false, that's great. They haven't named, they haven't said anything. But for it to be hanging around for like 2 months.
But why suspend someone if it's false?
Well, no, I'm saying they're hanging around for 2 months.
But also the way it's impacting their other on-air talent, and that people are, publications are now running news stories with really serious stars like Gary Lineker, Jeremy Vine.
Saying that they are not involved
saying that they are not involved, but still, Ryland Clark's picture was put on as the lead image on a piece about this story. Now, I think this draws into question the journalistic legalities of whether you should be able to just run any image alongside any headline. That seems absolutely bizarre to me. So there's a whole conversation there about what this whole, like, clickbait, titillating stories, we can't resist it, but it drags so many people in.
No, just very quickly, there's obviously no photographic evidence, or the Sun would have run with it. So this is,
however,
it's hearsay.
Do you not find it slightly ironic that the Sun newspaper, who did pay 16 to 18-year-old girls for sexually explicit images for 45 years, are getting on their moral high horse? They're getting on their moral high horse. They had teenage girls on the payroll.
No, but she went, listen,
for 45 years.
Somebody's telling a story. Somebody's telling a story about something, about somebody who's potentially abused the power.
Perv.
No, but this is somebody's
for buying photographs, for buying explicit photographs.
But this is
something that was part of their business model.
No.
Until 2015. How is it not the same?
The pastry girls, that was their job. They volunteered.
And this person volunteered to sell their images.
Okay, hold on.
But it was part of the newspaper.
Can I stop you there? This show is nothing without
we're all different.
You two, listen, if you do this again, neither of you will be coming back.
You either support paying for nudes or you don't.
Amy, right. I'm not going to say it again. This show is nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices on. This is their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Let's head over to St Albans. Let's have a chat with our regular GB voice, Jackie Sampson. Jackie, God, these two, they're like kids.
I agree with you. The BBC should have acted faster. Intuitively and instinctively, I feel like the public bay for blood. Those at the top set themselves up in a certain way. They think they're above the law and people want to know who it is. But the truth will out. But there is a legal precedent. The BBC is probably already tied in legal knots and we can't just go what will be a career ruining thing either way, whether they're proved guilty or not. The name will come out. But I think intellectually, until there's an arrest, then perhaps they really shouldn't be named as much as we all like to see the great fall.
Jackie Sampson, perfectly level and reasonable views. Thank you so much, Jackie. Lovely to talk to you. She's our great British voice. Thank you so much. Right, this is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Still to come this week's Outside. My celebrity guest today, renowned for his hairstyling skills. He's opened up his first salon with celebrity hairdresser John Frieda. You may have caught him on shows including Celebrity Come Dine With Me and Celebrity Pointless. What do you think? Who do you think it is? Let's get some weather.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, further showers and longer spells of rain over the next few days. There will be some sunshine though, but for many of us it will feel fresher. And the reason for this is this area of low pressure. It's been around over the last few days, just sat to the west of us, but over the coming few days it actually spreads towards us and increases the risk of showers and longer spells of rain even more. This evening we do have thundery showers across the UK, but they will start to fade away, and then most places overnight we'll see clear skies, though towards the early hours we could see some showers moving back into southwestern parts of the UK. Temperatures generally the low to mid-teens, so a little fresher than recent nights, but still quite warm for the time of year. Monday morning gets off to a dry start for many, plenty of sunny spells, though the cloud quickly thickens from the southwest. This area of rain pushes northeastwards through the day, turning heavy at times, particularly across Wales into the Midlands, northwest England too. Elsewhere we'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers, and the best of the sunshine towards the southeast. We could see highs around 24 or 25 Celsius. Elsewhere generally the high teens to low 20s. That area of rain across North Wales, northern England, continues to push further north as we head through the evening, and then further spells of rain push into southern parts of the UK as we move into the early hours. This could be heavy at times, so overnight a lot of cloud around outbreaks of rain, and that will keep temperatures up generally a little higher, 14 to 17 degrees across much of the country. So it means a cloudy, wet start for many Tuesday morning. Heavy showers already, but it should brighten up as we move through the morning into the afternoon. But that will trigger a few heavy showers too. Over the next few days, it remains unsettled as that low pressure stays in charge. Further showers and longer spells of rain and temperatures around average.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. This is GB News. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for Worldview. Yesterday it marked 500 days since Russia launched their invasion of Ukraine, a bleak milestone for a conflict with no end in sight currently. Now, Ukraine and its Western allies hope the ambitious counter-offensive launched last month can liberate Russian-occupied areas. So joining me to talk about all of that is Russian journalist Alexei Vir. Alexei, thank you very much. Good to see you again. Alexei, so talk to me about what's going on at the moment? Because Biden and his cluster bombs.
Hello, Nana. Yes, earlier this week, U.S. President Joe Biden finally approved the supply of cluster bombs to Ukraine. The decision, which he said was a hard one. And I just remind you that cluster bombs are considered an inhumane kind of weapon, banned in most countries, but not in the United States. Actually, the United States has been using cluster bombs in most conflicts since the war in Korea, and they're probably supplying the same cluster bombs they still bomb Vietnam with. And I can assure you that here in the Kremlin, it will be seen as a step towards further escalation, pretty much as all other weapon supplies to Ukraine. At the same time, Ukrainian Minister of Defense, Alexei Reznikov, he said that Ukraine does need those cluster bomb supplies as well as all other weapons supplies so they can continue their counteroffensive that apparently is stalemated right now. But I will leave it to military experts to comment on whether it's efficient to not use cluster bombs on its own territory, because as we remember, the problem with cluster bombs that a lot of them don't detonate right away, but they can detonate decades later and injure, well, both friendly troops and civilians.
Can I ask you as well, on a slightly lighter note, Prigozhin and his wig collection?
That's a good one. Well, earlier this week, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, he said that Mr. Prigozhin, the head of the Wagner Group, he is not in Belarus. And while it has been a mystery, his whereabouts have been a mystery for everyone, because earlier we tracked his private jet flying to Belarus. We don't know if he was on board or not, but then his private jet returned to St. Petersburg. He might be in St. Petersburg right now because, well, it's the power hold of Mr. Putin himself, but it's also the home city of Mr. Prigozhin. That, well, in the 90s, those two powerful men, they were walking the same streets. That's how they met. That's how Prigozhin's career started. So his wig collection obviously has to do with more than just his artistic abilities, because right now he has to conceal his identity. So far, I haven't seen him on the streets of Moscow, but, well, I don't know. We have to see in St. Petersburg.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. That's Alexei.
Thank you.
To talk to you. Let's travel over to America now and speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge. Let's see what he's got in store for us. Now, let's go with Biden. He's visiting the UK, isn't he? He's coming to see Sunak.
He's your problem now, OK? Treat him with kid gloves. Make sure there's handrails everywhere, will you please? I'm leaving that in your hands. No steps.
Or sandbags.
Right? So listen, we're trusting you with him. Handle with care.
So what also he's coming here, and now I hear a rumour about cocaine in the White House.
Yes, well, we've had our scandal this week. Yeah, they found cocaine in the White House, and the press secretary, they can't confirm or deny who is responsible for leaving this. They're saying the cocaine was found in a lobby of the West Wing, where many staffers and official visitors enter, and officials believe that the source of the drug is highly unlikely to be determined. So I'm just waiting for them to blame it on Donald Trump somehow. That's really the only game in town. Is they're going to connect it to him somewhere down the line. But yes, it doesn't look like they're ever going to fully acknowledge who is responsible for depositing cocaine in the White House, leaving it in a lobby in a highly trafficked area, even though it's probably the most secure, photographed, CCTV'd building in the world. Apparently, they've got absolutely no clue as to who could have done this. But yes, keep watching this. But yes, cocaine in the White House. It's not called the White House for nothing.
Very good, I like that. Now, with regard to Trump, you mentioned him. They'll probably blame it on him. But what about him and his valet? What is that about?
Look, right, you can take certain views. I take the view that this is a witch hunt. They are trying, the Department of Justice is going after everybody around Trump. And so they have even now prosecuted, and he's had to plead guilty, his valet. And yeah, I don't know if you're aware of, like, when a president enters administration, they have like a body man, they call him. And it's just an assistant, an executive assistant, a valet, basically. This guy's actually left the administration after Trump left and came with him. And he basically is just like, straightens collars and just is his sort of hands in gum, etc. That kind of role. The Department of Justice have prosecuted him for actually moving boxes of documents. This is basically it. And so even in the New York Times, they're reporting that this guy is called Walt Nata. He's going to be, his name's going to be around a lot in the coming months. Walt Nata. He's the lowest on the ladder of the administration. He literally is just the hands the president gum kind of guy. He's being prosecuted. They're trying anything to get anybody to flip on Donald Trump to testify against him.
It's absurd. Listen, Paul Dudridge, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. Host of the Politics People podcast. This is GB News. More to come in the next hour. It's 5 o'clock. We are the People's Channel. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio for the next hour. Me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. In just a moment, I'll be joined by my celebrity mystery guest. He's known to be the king of hairdressing. He's got a great empire as well. He's been on loads of reality TV shows. Any ideas who he is, get that message into me now. Then on the way, the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time for Labour to disassociate from Just Stop Oil? But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Thank you very much, Nana. I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. The BBC has suspended the male presenter accused of paying a teenager tens of thousands of pounds for explicit images. That's after it emerged the young person's mother told the Sun she saw a photo of the man in his underwear on her child's phone. The Director General, Tim Davie, has confirmed the BBC was aware of a complaint in May and has been investigating the case ever since. In a statement, he also condemned the unsubstantiated rumours being made on the internet about some of the corporations presenting talent. More than 1,000 people have crossed the English Channel on small boats over the past 2 days. The Home Office says over 600 people were intercepted on Friday and almost 400 made the journey yesterday. Well, despite storm warnings, conditions are calm, and GB News understands more than 200 people have already been intercepted this morning. It brings this year's total to 12,700. The Home Office says the number of people risking their lives is unacceptable. Britain is preparing to host the US president, who's due to arrive this evening. Joe Biden has boarded Air Force One in Delaware and is now on his way to Stansted Airport. Well, tomorrow he'll meet the King at Windsor Castle before holding talks with the Prime Minister at Downing Street. He's expected to raise concerns about Brexit and America's decision to send cluster munitions to Ukraine. Well, Joe Biden's visit comes ahead of the NATO summit in Lithuania, where the Prime Minister will urge allies to bolster their defence spending. Speaking in Vilnius on Tuesday, Rishi Sunak is expected to say that we're seeing unprecedented security challenges. The UK remains one of the few NATO members meeting the alliance's requirement to spend at least 2% of national income on defence. More than 700 firearms have been seized in the UK by the National Crime Agency. Forces have been working with police in Spain to stop guns, which can easily be converted from entering the UK. In 11 cases, firearms were sent to people with mental health issues, and 7 involved people with extremist views. The NCA says 74 people have been arrested, resulting in 50 convictions over the past 5 years. Police say they're investigating a possible hate-related incident in County Tyrone. It's after the Irish flag and a picture of the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, was placed on top of a bonfire. There was also a boat with a banner which read Good Friday Agreement. That ship has sailed. The pyre was later set alight. Well, PSNI Chief Inspector John Kears says evidence is now being gathered to establish whether a criminal offence has been committed. Just Stop Oil has denied any involvement in the stunt at the former Chancellor's wedding yesterday. The group posted a video of a woman who threw orange confetti at George Osborne and also at his wife, Thea Rogers. But it's now saying it wasn't responsible for it. Just Stop Oil, however, applauded the move, which generated publicity for its cause. The Chancellor is set to outline so-called evolutionary pension reforms to boost economic growth. Jeremy Hunt plans to make changes to pension funds, encouraging investors to support fast-growing businesses. Well, in a speech tomorrow, he's expected to say the changes will be gradual, not drastic. The government says the aim is to help savers, pension schemes and the UK. Concerns have been raised about the thousands of displaced Ukrainians who are still in temporary accommodation in Scotland. The Liberal Democrats say more than 3,000 Ukrainians are still in hotels and around 700 are on board the MS Victoria cruise ship, where the party says progress has been slow and it criticised the lack of resources. The government says it's working on longer-term housing. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Nana.
Thank you, Rory. Good afternoon. It's 5 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next hour, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me today, it's broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly, and also political commentator Amy Nicole-Turner. Still to come each Sunday at 5, I'm joined by a celebrity, a former MP, or someone who's had an extremely interesting career to take a look at life after the job. We talk highs, lows and lessons learned and what comes next on the outside. And today, my celebrity mystery guest was renowned for his hairstyling skill. He opened his first salon with celebrity hairdresser John Frieda. You may have caught him on shows including Celebrity Come Dining and also Come Dine With Me, Pointless and other stuff. He was also awarded an OBE, and I'm pretty sure that he cut Princess Diana's hair. And for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time Labour disassociate from Just Stop Oil? The eco-warriors are at it again after throwing confetti over the former Chancellor George Osborne and his new wife at the wedding. This begs the question whether Labour need to start distancing themselves from the controversial group. As ever, email me, gbnews.com, or tweet me at GBNews. But before outside, let's get back to our breaking news I brought you earlier on in the show. The BBC have confirmed that the unnamed male presenter has been suspended. Now, the presenter is alleged to have paid thousands of pounds to a teenager in exchange for explicit sexual images. I'm going to have a chat now with international broadcaster Judita De Silva to get to the latest. Judita, thank you very much for joining me. So we've got an unnamed BBC presenter. We've been asking people whether he should be named. What's your thoughts on that?
Because I was actually talking to a lawyer about this just before and looking at the parameters that the BBC has to operate within. Based on historical issues they've had about handling of situations like this, the BBC operates in service of the public, so it's all about optics. But then also they have to think about the ramifications short-term and long-term. To get an allegation, people say all kinds of things about famous figures. You have to be seen to investigate and follow due process to an extent, because down the line, should that person be able to prove themselves innocent, you then have to deal with the blowback of them taking you to court for things like defamation of character, emotional distress, failure to follow protection of employees, and that can cost them millions. So they have to think about that. But also they have to be seen to be doing what's necessary publicly to be showing that they're taking it seriously. So as far as not naming them, I think their hands are tied. They cannot, because even in the language they've been using, they said they have to deal with this fairly and with care, and they have robust investigations, because you're innocent until proven guilty. Should they name it, thinking about these kinds of allegations, this is mud that sticks for the rest of a career. So if this person eventually is proven innocent, you've done irreparable damage and you will have to pay for that. But in situations like this, the burden of proof lies with the victim. Once you've reached a threshold of proof, they will have to name the person in question.
It's interesting because earlier we were saying, it was my view that if somebody had come to them, say, in May, which is when the parent of this alleged teenager came forward, it was in May, the BBC didn't seem to act or do anything. And so apparently, just reading from what the papers say, the mother then got annoyed, sort of thing, because she wasn't getting the response or any real investigation. Do you think the BBC, in a sense, seemed to drag their heels a little bit?
Again, it's the legal issues they have, because from what we know, it's a well-positioned person, this presenter. And when the accusations were made in May, what upset the mother was that the person stayed on air. but look at the position they have. Should you get an accusation like that and pull them off air, they can say that you haven't met the burden of proof to justify you pulling that person off air. It would take time to investigate it, to again meet that threshold of proof. Now they say in the statement they released just over an hour ago, the individual has been suspended. So they're following the lines, especially because they're going to be scrutinized beyond anyone else. Should they now retroactively be investigated for how they handle this? They have crossed every T, dotted every I, and ticked every box, where we gave the person, they afforded the person the protections under the umbrella of being a BBC employee, because guilty or innocent, they do have those protections. But once certain things have been met, the person was suspended pending further investigation. So the BBC has done its job. They may not like the speed it's being done at, but it is being done according to the letter of the law they need to follow.
Well, I mean, OK, so in that respect, it is fair enough. But again, I do think that seems like a long time, because, was it like May through to now June, July? You know, if you're going to investigate to see whether you're going to take someone off air for some period of time, now that person has been suspended, pending it. Say in politics, in certain situations, that person may have been named, but at this point, do you think now that person's been suspended, they should be named, or do you still hold with the fact that we really need to keep it down until we actually have some proper information?
The key is or to avoid it's kind of like the way judges in courts are governed. Even if there's no impropriety, the perception of impropriety is bad enough as impropriety itself. BBC cannot be seen to be, quote unquote, throwing him under the bus to preserve their image. Right now, I guarantee there is no communication between the management of BBC and this individual. Everything is going through lawyers, because after the fact, there's the perception of collusion. So what is happening now is that the lawyers for this person are saying that they are protected up until this burden of proof is met. Then their name can be released. I just don't believe it has been met yet, because we're still at the allegation stage. Once that has been proven, the BBC then can say we're releasing the name in the public interest. So this is all a lot of very difficult and, as Tim Davies said, very complex situations to juggle at the same time, because whether you think it's deplorable, that person as a BBC employee has rights, and you're innocent until proven guilty, and those rights must be respected. And again, our hearts may go out to the allegations made to the victim. They have to be protected as well. So everyone's lawyers are definitely earning their wages right now.
Interesting. Judith De Silva, thank you very much for that. Thank you so much. Really good to talk to you. She's a broadcaster, an international broadcaster at that. Well, of course, now, though, it is time for this week's Outside. Now, my special mystery guest is famous for building a hair empire. He landed his first shoot with Vogue, aged just 17, before working with John Frieda to open their own salon. He suffered from a heroin addiction in the 1980s, but recovered and started building what would become a very successful business alongside then-girlfriend Leslie Clark. You starved the locks of icons such as Princess Diana, Margaret Thatcher and David Bowie, and his hands were once insured for £1 million. He also became a media personality, appearing on numerous TV shows. My mystery guest today, have you guessed it? Yes, of course, it's Nikki Clark. Nikki, nice to see you. What fabulous hair you have. God, you can't be that old.
My head these days.
Yeah, but it looks so good. It looks so full. What do you do to keep it that way? I want to know, because honestly...
it's called getting out of the shower and doing nothing with it. No, listen. I mean, I've always used my own products because that's all that's ever been around. But you know, one has to admit that the cosmetic side of it is only a small percentage. You know, I'm blessed genetically. I think that that, as I say, it's still on my head anyway.
No, it looks great. It looks great. And you can't be that old, though. How old are you? Can you say?
Well, I actually just had my 65th birthday, actually, just last week.
Great. 65. Wow, look at you. You have an age.
I'm not loving that, that's for sure.
Wow, well, you have an age. You don't look that old at all. You look the way you looked when I last saw you, when you were doing a lot of stuff on TV. But you've been in the hair business for quite some time. So talk to me about the early years of getting into hair, because, I mean, you had your own salon very quickly and in one of the most exclusive parts of London. But talk to me about all all of that, how you sort of came to that?
Yeah, I mean, actually, it wasn't really that quickly. I mean, I started in 1974, and I was fortunate to be told to go to a guy called Leonard, who was really the leading light of his time, and really, I just started there as a teenager, and you know, sweeping hair, and you know, polishing the brass, and all of those things. And again, I was just very, very fortunate to be assigned at that point. I worked very much with John Frieda, who was doing an awful lot of editorial magazine work, of which, you know, I started to do an awful lot myself. As you said in the intro, you know, actually, by chance, I ended up doing my first job for Vogue magazine at the age of 17. I think I lied about my age, actually. But no, I've been very, very fortunate in a career that has spanned salons and traveling and, you know, a magazine career. And then, in fact, in the 90s, after 16 or 17 years, in fact, of being at John Frieda, I decided to open up my own salon. So that, of course, was over 30 odd years ago. And I didn't really know that it was going to have the kind of impact that it did. But of course, what happened was, I suppose, the stars were all aligned. That mixture of somebody that had the experience in a salon and the experience in the studio, and so was unusual. You know, there were lots of great hairdressers that were in salons and lots of great hairdressers that were in studios and doing magazine work, but there really wasn't anybody else doing both, I suppose. So I think it was really that kind of helped. And, you know, and I had a whole load of celebrity clients as well that obviously thought that I was doing something right.
Yeah, but you had Princess Diana, you did her hair. I remember that, because she's sort of like a... Because I remember my brother, he sort of styled my hair one time when I had the wet look. You may have remembered that awful greasy style that was years ago. And he styled my hair, and it was styled exactly the same way his was. And I noticed that Princess Diana's hair was a similar style to yours. You had that sort of...
You know, it's very interesting. Yeah. The thing is, yeah, I did do Princess Diana's hair, but actually, I don't really take the credit for it. I mean, you know, this amazing hairdresser called Sam McKnight was the guy who really did the whole thing. But it just happened to be that you know, I knew her from some of the fashion shows that she would come to the rehearsals. So I was there. And also my son went to the same school as William for a year. So in fact, I would see her in the mornings. And in fact, when I did her hair, on one of the occasions, it was actually when she was going to see Pavarotti in the park. And of course, she got completely drenched. So it kind of went around the world with this wet look hair that you're talking about. But as much as she was just a delight, and also that, you know, on the tour buses, it was as if I was doing hair. I can't really take the credit for doing it all the time. That really has to go to Sam.
Yeah. Have you ever done somebody's hair and it's gone badly wrong, though? Like, when it's gone really bad, you've gone, oh God.
You know what? I would love to sit here and say, yeah, 30 years ago or whenever it was, I did this thing and it didn't work, and it would make such great copy. But I mean, without being too sort of, I don't want to be too egotistical, but it was like, no, that never happened, because I was too scared that was going to. So, you know, we would be talking about things, you know, if I was doing something quite radical and those things did happen, it wasn't without a conversation. I really didn't want to have those moments where somebody sort of looks at it and went, really? Is that kind of, you know, I mean, so, yeah, I'm sure maybe there were times when it may have not been as perfect, but I can't think of any real disasters at all, actually.
That's good. That's good. So what are you up to these days now? What are you up to now? What's going on? Because you closed the salon about a year ago, didn't you?
Well, I closed London down. I mean, you know, I expected there to be some publicity, but I didn't quite expect it to be the outpouring of grief that I had, as if I was retiring. And, you know, it was very odd. I mean, my wife now says that, God, it's like you died, and, you know, you got to hear about, you know, all these incredible eulogies from people. I mean, I go, well, I'm not retiring. And in fact, actually, my life is busier now than it was. I mean, I still have my salon in Birmingham. I work out of my brother's salon in London. But, you know, most importantly, my product company, which is the electrical side of the business, has always been the biggest part of our business. You know, without sounding too trite about it, I have salons because I like working in a salon. I like working with people. And, I'm going to be like Mick Jagger. I'm never retiring. So thank God. I mean, I think my clients breathed a sigh of relief. So, no, I'm busier than ever. But, the London salon just didn't work in terms of the way, after COVID, we had an awful lot of, hairdressers that didn't want to come in, people that it was a different dynamic. And to be fair, I don't really want to have a salon unless it's actually fantastic, and I don't want my legacy to be anything other than it being just kind of wonderful and mad. So, that's what I do now. I still do my clients and that's, I concentrate on the product company. And also it just seems to be now that internationally there seems to be an awful lot more interest in, me trying to bring either that educational program or salons to other parts of the world. Certainly in the Middle East at the moment is kind of becoming very interesting. But no, I'd like to say that I'm retiring, but no, it's not quite the case yet.
Well, listen, if you do a job you love, you never work a day in your life. Nikki Clark, thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you. Fabulous.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. God, his hair's great, isn't it? This is GB News. And thank you to Nikki Clark. That was outside. Loads still to come. Stay tuned. On the way, of course, the Great British Debate in Supplements and Supplements Sundays, where we'll be discussing relationships. But first, let's get some weather.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, further showers and longer spells of rain over the next few days. There will be some sunshine though, but for many of us it will feel fresher. And the reason for this is this area of low pressure. It's been around over the last few days, just sat to the west of us, but over the coming few days it actually spreads towards us and increases the risk of showers and longer spells of rain even more. This evening we do have thundery showers across the UK, but they will start to fade away, and then most places overnight we'll see clear skies, though towards the early hours we could see some showers moving back into southwestern parts of the UK. Temperatures generally the low to mid-teens, so a little fresher than recent nights, but still quite warm for the time of year. Monday morning gets off to a dry start for many, plenty of sunny spells, though the cloud quickly thickens from the southwest. This area of rain pushes northeastwards through the day, turning heavy at times, particularly across Wales into the Midlands, northwest England too. Elsewhere we'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers, and the best of the sunshine towards the southeast. We could see highs around 24 or 25 Celsius. Elsewhere generally the high teens to low 20s. That area of rain across North Wales, northern England, continues to push further north as we head through the evening, and then further spells of rain push into southern parts of the UK as we move into the early hours. This could be heavy at times, so overnight a lot of cloud around outbreaks of rain, and that will keep temperatures up generally a little higher, 14 to 17 degrees across much of the country. So it means a cloudy, wet start for many Tuesday morning. Heavy showers already, but it should brighten up as we move through the morning into the afternoon. But that will trigger a few heavy showers too. Over the next few days it remains unsettled as that low pressure stays in charge. Further showers and longer spells of rain and temperatures around average.
That warm feeling inside. From Boxed Boilers. Proud sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. It's now time for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, is it time for Labour to disassociate from Just Stop Oil? Clean energy entrepreneur Dale Vince is one of Just Stop Oil's biggest backers, but has also donated at least £1.5 million to the Labour Party. Sir Keir Starmer says that if his party wins the next election, they'll put a ban on future North Sea oil and gas drilling, which Rishi Sunak sees as evidence of Just Stop Oil directly influencing Labour policy, leading to the UK towards energy surrender. Just Stop Oil have also united those on all sides of the political spectrum with their disruptive action, which many argue that shows a blatant disregard for the general public. And over 2,000 eco-activists have been arrested since the group was founded in 2022. Home Secretary Suella Braverman says the group's protests have cost taxpayers over £18 billion. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time for Labour to disassociate from Just Stop Oil? Joining me to discuss, Belinda DeLucy, former Brexit Party MEP, Lewis Perry, Director of Car 26, Jim Dale, Senior Meteorologist, and Dennis McShane, former Labour MP and Minister of State. Well, I'm going to start with you, Belinda. What do you think?
Well, I think this sort of feigned anger and shock and horror that Labour are churning out now about Just Stop Oil is a bit silly, really, because there's no escaping that this primary donor to Just Stop Oil is now helping to bankroll the Labour Party. There's no escaping that Labour ministers in Wales are reportedly having quarterly meetings with Extinction Rebellion, you know, to shape their policy, or that they voted against the new police powers to stop these protesters, and their ridiculous ban on new licenses for gas and oil in the North Sea. You know, the proof is in the pudding, and this kind of weird menage a trois Labour's got going on with the Just Stop Oil backers and Extinction Rebellion, I think gift the Conservatives an incredible attack line for the next election. This kind of stuff is student union politics written on the back of a beer mat, you know, at the Wokest University. They need to grow up and realise the British people are not with them on this.
Jim Dale.
Good afternoon. Not sure you've looked at the polls of late, but Labour are streets ahead of the Tories, and this has been a dialogue for some time. But I would say this at the very beginning. Labour is not associated with Just Stop Oil. I don't know where this comes from. Well, I do know where it comes from, but there is no.
Well, do you or don't you know where it comes from? You said you do and you don't. Hang on, sorry, Jim. You said you don't know where it comes from, then you said you do know where it comes from. It comes from a big backer, Dale Vince.
There is a loose association. Of course there is. It's simply because Labour have want to push ahead with green policies at net zero and the rest of it. So obviously there is a likeness in terms of saying they are associated by some sort of formal signed agreement. Absolutely not. No, so this is, if you ask Keir Starmer or Rachel Reeves, I saw her on TV this morning, she actually distanced herself from Just Oil. So this is untrue, spoken from the far right, trying to sort of paint Labour as some kind of monster and trying to associate them with what's going on at Wimbledon and other places in terms of the demonstrations.
It's interesting. Untruths from the far right. I'm just talking about a 1.5 million donation, which is an actual truth. Lewis Perry.
Well, hi. Can I just say that they wouldn't need to disassociate themselves from Just Stop Oil if indeed they were not associated with them. And actually, in the last week, Keir Starmer had to again disassociate himself from Dale Vince, a major Just Stop Oil donor, because he said that those who say that the climate change is not man-made are as bad, or maybe even worse, than Holocaust deniers. So there's definitely an association there. And actually, there was a massive donation made to the Labour Party when Ed Miliband was Energy Secretary. And he actually then put the Climate Change Act through, which Dale Vince directly benefited from to the tune over the course of the last period to £100 million. And as I say, he's one of the major Just Stop Oil donors. But Just Stop Oil have actually done so much harm in terms of the green movement and the CO2 is terrible agenda. You know, you've got political parties tripping over themselves now to say, actually, do you know what? We're not that green after all, whether it be the Labour Party or Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak has just pulled $11.6 billion for an aid deal. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to bring Dennis McShane in because he's doing some sort of funny smiling as if he thinks it's funny. Dennis.
It is.
No, it's always great. It's not fun. It's great fun. Just Stop Oil should just shut up, shouldn't they? We can all agree on that. On the question of the finance and donations, I was arguing for 20 years. I failed in government. We can only clean up British politics. Boris Johnson took £14 million from Vladimir Putin in donations to the Conservative Party if we get democracy to pay for democracy. Let's leave that on one side. I'd be a bit cautious. There's a guy called Mark Harper. You haven't heard of him. He's a transport secretary. He put out the most amazing tweet today saying he was going to ban everybody in the country, every council that's tried to do low-emission neighbourhoods. Now, that's a message to my grandchildren. The Tories want you out on the streets swallowing poisonous air. I think the Tories are so out of touch. Right now, this country, every country in the world, wants cleaner air, sort out the climate change challenge. And frankly,
Dennis,
I don't think Tories should be sincere enough. They've done some good work.
Listen, Dennis, I read that piece. Dennis, I read that piece with regard to Mark Harper. I think what he was more saying was actually for them to actually listen to what the people want rather than just imposing LTNs without even and ignoring what the people who are paying their salaries and paying for the council actually want. Listen, we've run out of time. I could talk to you guys for ages. Thank you very much to Belinda DeLucy, former Brexit Party MEP, Lois Perry, Director of Car 26, Jim Dale, Senior Meteorologist, and Dennis McShane, former Labour Minister of State for Europe. This is GBNews on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. On the way, we'll continue with the Great British Debate, and I'm asking, is it time Labour disassociate from Just Stop Oil? But first, let's get your latest news headlines.
Nana, thank you very much and good afternoon. This is the latest from the GB newsroom. The BBC has suspended the male presenter accused of paying a teenager tens of thousands of pounds for explicit images. That's after it emerged the young person's mother told The Sun she saw a photo of the man in his underwear on her child's phone. The Director General, Tim Davie, has confirmed the BBC was aware of a complaint in May and has been investigating the case ever since. In a statement, he also condemned the unsubstantiated rumours being made on the internet about some of the corporations presenting talent. Britain is preparing to host the US president, who's due to arrive this evening. Joe Biden has boarded Air Force One in Delaware and is now on his way to Stansted Airport. Tomorrow, he'll meet the King at Windsor Castle before holding talks with the Prime Minister at Downing Street. He's expected to raise concerns about Brexit and America's decision to send cluster munitions to Ukraine. Well, Joe Biden's visit comes ahead of the NATO summit in Lithuania, where the Prime Minister will urge allies to bolster their defence spending. Speaking in Vilnius on Tuesday, Rishi Sunak's expected to say we're seeing unprecedented security challenges. The UK remains one of the few NATO members meeting the alliance's requirement to spend at least 2% of national income on defence. And more than 1,000 people have crossed the English Channel on small boats over the past 2 days. The Home Office says over 600 people were intercepted on Friday and almost 400 made the journey yesterday. Despite storm warnings, conditions are calm, and GB News understands more than 200 people have already been intercepted this morning. It brings this year's total to 12,700. The Home Office says the number of people risking their lives is unacceptable. You can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website at gbnews.com.
Thirty-nine minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. It's time now for our Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, is it time for Labour to disassociate from Just Stop Oil? Now, clean energy entrepreneur Del Vince is just one of Just Stop Oil's biggest backers, but has also donated 1.5 million quid to the Labour Party. Sir Keir Starmer says that if the party wins the next election, they'll put a ban on future North Sea oil and gas drilling. But Just Stop Oil have united those on all sides of the political spectrum with their disruptive action, with many arguing that shows a blatant disregard for the public. So, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, is it time for Labour to disassociate from Just Stop Oil? Let's see what my panel make of that. I'm joined now by author and broadcaster Amy Nicol and also broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Right, Amy Nicol, Just Stop Oil.
Well, Just Stop Oil are not associated with the Labour Party. The Labour Party have condemned Just Stop Oil's tactics this week.
Whilst accepting the money?
No! I shop at Tesco's, I sometimes shop at Sainsbury's. They're not linked to each other.
What's that got to do with it?
Dale Vince is a Just Stop Oil donor. And then separately, Dale Vince is a Labour Party donor and supporter. Those two things are not inextricably linked.
Why? Why are they not?
Of course they're not. It's up to him where he what he's done.
I've actually interviewed him and he said that he'll back a party that supports his green agenda.
Dale Vince is a Just Stop Oil supporter, but the Labour Party have condemned Just Stop Oil.
Whilst taking the money. Danny,
I loathe what they do. I really do, and they're becoming more loathsome as the days go on. Now, I know when George Osborne, right, some people hate him for being a Conservative and being a Chancellor.
300,000 people dying due to austerity.
Some people loathe him, but they can't. Like, you should look at it objectively. Why should a lone wolf? So Just Stop Oil say it's nothing to do with them, but that middle-aged woman was inspired by Just Stop Oil.
It was just confetti.
Yes, but let's.
Hang on,
why should
something else? You're talking about George Osborne now.
If you look, I'm talking about how much I loathe what they do now.
Protest
if you look at it,
tactics.
No, but if you look at it objectively, why should they ruin his day? Now, you don't like George
a lot
Osborne.
more than that ruined his day.
No, see, this,
I think that day was ruined before it started.
People who don't like him can't detach their emotions and look at it subjectively. Sorry, it's so subjective. They should look. Okay, give the guy a break. It's his wedding day. There's no need to ruin his wedding day.
You're now talking about the confetti.
Didn't ruin his wedding day.
We've moved on from that. We're now talking about the confetti offered George Osborne by somebody who says that they're part of Stop Stop Oil.
She was a lone wolf attack. We're almost talking about ISIS. You know, when ISIS-inspired attacks. We're talking about Just Stop Oil-inspired attacks.
But they then said that she's not with them.
That's what I said.
Even after saying, great, well done.
OK, so Labour, if I was a Conservative, I would love Labour to continue the association, whether it's a genuine association or not.
They've condemned them. There is no association.
I hope Dale Vince ploughs millions more into the Labour Party, because the perception is that he's a Labour Party backer.
Dale Vince is winning support for Just Stop Oil.
No,
every time Dale Vince appears on TV, he wins support for Just Stop Oil.
From who? Where have you got that from? Because, you can say that.
All his recent media appearances have just strengthened their
How do you know? Where are you?
You can see the man comes armed with facts. He's good-humoured. He's a great poster.
Yeah, but I'm good-humoured. I'm armed with facts. Doesn't mean that
for that cause. But if we talk about, for instance, the Wimbledon incident, and can I just say, I do feel like every time a major sporting event is disrupted or something, there is an element of being, like, loving the chaos. Come on, a little.
What, Johnny Benson?
Like when he did, exactly.
Yeah, but that's not loving the chaos.
We love the footage.
But that's not really showing
no, but my point is that on the day of Wimbledon, actually, rain stopped play more than that protest did.
I'm not bothered.
So in many ways, that's an irony to me, because the climate is making its own protest there.
Amy, the sporting events being disrupted don't bother me, really, because they're on for 90 seconds, then they're dragged off. What I really find repellent is that they hold normal working men and women up on their daily, for example, their daily trip to the office, trying to earn a couple of quid. And that's what I find now. It's become reprehensible. You know, disrupt the
But
cricket,
they
that's
are.
fine.
They
but
are
why
normal.
stop thousands of people trying to earn a crust?
I think their point would always be that the climate disruption we're going to see, unless we stick to the legally binding net zero, which is enshrined in law by the Conservative Party, supported cross-party, then we're going to be more disrupted than a traffic jam or a jigsaw puzzle.
Well, let me just say, I think that what's happened is the political parties have stolen their thunder because they've got literally nothing to complain about because we are heading in that direction in any case. The public actually support the notion of cleaner air and a better environment, but nobody supports the notion of people behaving like spoilt brats, throwing bits of confetti over people during weddings and stuff like that.
Some people do condone it.
Amy, do you condone that? Do you think that's great that he chucked confetti over George Osborne and his wife after the wedding?
I think a little bit of orange confetti. It was just normal confetti.
But that could have been anything. So
we mustn't be the snowflakes that get offended by a bit of paper, should we?
You could extend that to something that would be toxic and dangerous, but that
but
behaviour...
it wasn't toxic
No, but that
dangerous.
behaviour...
It's a disruption on your biggest day of your life, potentially.
He's had a couple, hasn't he? So...
But you can't detach yourself, and this is the problem.
I don't think that the fact that it wasn't toxic and dangerous...
Look, congratulations.
I don't think that the fact that it was toxic and wasn't toxic and dangerous is something that we should ignore, because that kind of behaviour, we cannot condone that, because that could be somebody that does something like that that's toxic.
May I just finally say, right, I think we're all in agreement. The consensus is the Conservatives are going to lose the next election. Labour have said that they're not going to invest in any new oil and gas drills. So why can't they just have a moratorium? They're not going to change the Tories' minds over the next 18 months. Stop all of the protest, allow people to get on with their daily life, and then when Labour come in, which they probably will do, then they're going to have that guarantee, which is what they want.
I think George Osborne's wedding was a perfect target because he was part of the David Cameron administration, which famously said this green, I don't know whether I can say it on daytime TV, and they abandoned, they had a moratorium of green policies during that time, including the sustainable building that we were going to go ahead with. They rewound the tape in many ways. So George Osborne, that's why he was a target.
Well, I was going to say, as they said, the person there said, Just Support, actually, although they corroborated and said something afterwards, they then said that person was a lone wolf. But this shows nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices on, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. I've got three of you today, three of you. Let's start with John Reid from Kidderminster. John, what do you think then? Is it time for the Labour Party to completely, properly disassociate themselves, even from donors, for things like Just Stop Oil?
Nana, I am 100% with Danny on this one. I think he's really on the money. And not only should Labour disassociate themselves, but everybody else as well. What a bunch of nutcases going around the world doing protests, and it's never going to achieve anything, is it? So it's a complete disaster. Imagine a queue of people sat on the road stopping an ambulance going through.
Exactly.
It's too ridiculous.
They don't do that.
No, they do, Amy.
They have a blue light policy.
No,
they don't.
No, Amy said they don't do that. They do. They stop entire traffic. They don't know if an ambulance is 10 yards behind. I'm with you on that. Let's go to David Balme. He's there in Watford.
Hi, Nana. Hi, team. I think Labour should, but because I can see the lone wolf policy thing. Labour, if, God forbid, someone had died at Silverstone because of a stupid protest, Labour would have been up in arms demanding a government inquiry. How could this happen? They have to disassociate themselves from donors and from this whole campaign. If they win the next election, there's no guarantee they will, then they can be judged on their policies. But to say that they don't allow the stop ambulances going through, there's film of ambulances not getting through. There are films of donor vehicles not getting through because these idiots sit in the middle of the road.
Alan McNeely.
Afternoon, all. The link between Labour, Dale Vince and Just Stop Oil is all very convenient, isn't it, Nana?
Well, it does seem that way.
Dale Vince has made £110 million in taxpayer subsidy. Recently, he was going to sell his company for between £200 million and £300 million. It's not for sale at the moment. But I just wondered if he's such an eco-warrior, he'd like to give back that £110 million of taxpayers' money to the government and make us all a little bit better off. These people are just absolute lunatics, Dana.
Well, of course he'd back. I mean, I've spoken to Dale. It's all very laudable, but of course, if you've got an Ecotricity and a company that deals with renewables and things like that, and the government are pushing that way, of course you'd back them, the government who decide to do that. Thank you very much to my great British voices, John in Kidderminster, David in Watford and Alan in Grimsby. Lovely to talk to you. Right, though, now it's time for Supplement Sunday. This is the part where my panel and I discuss some of the news stories that caught their eye. Joining me now, author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner, as a broadcaster and journalist Danny Kelly. Right, so let's start with Danny's supplement. Danny,
well, no surprise here. The Yanks, the Americans, are more than used to paying large amounts of extras in gratuities, but all around the world, how much do you pay? 20 to 25% is the standard tip in America. I've been in New York. I can't remember what I ordered, but I was expecting $3 or $4 change, and the barmaid didn't even come back with the change. I saw her put it in the tip bucket. She didn't even offer me the opportunity.
Didn't even think that you weren't giving her that money. She just took it.
She assumed that it was her money.
But it's 10%, isn't it, when you get to America?
20, 25%.
Just gone up 25?
It's maddening. It's crazy.
When I was there, it was 10% money. That was when I was 11.
It's such an American custom, though. Tip your bartender. Like, come on, Danny.
But they would argue
Be culturally aware.
They would argue that they don't get paid enough by the boss. So what you need to do is tackle that first, give them a decent standard of living, and then they don't have to have 20, 25%.
No, the tips are good because sometimes they're cash. And before, years ago, when I was a waitress in Pizza Express, I was really good. I used to get like 20 quid in tips a night, but they were untaxed because they were money that you were given by the customer. So it was a gift. But now they put it on the actual bill, so then then they're taxed and everything else.
And if you get particularly good service, you can reward that more.
You wouldn't do 25%, Amy.
Well, it depends about the price. So me and my husband, we were on holiday in Egypt recently, and we were tipping just what we thought we would like, maybe £2 tips for every time we ordered something. And we thought, wow, we're getting really, really good service on this holiday. We Googled later the conversion rate, and we realised we were kind of tipping them their monthly income by the end of the holiday.
How much is that? What would that tip be?
It was, no, because we worked out, because it was the same staff every day, so by the end of the holiday, I think we'd given them £100 or something.
They probably looked at you guys and thought, there's one board every minute.
But I was quite happy to do that, because for us it
wasn't anything.
Yeah.
That's lovely. Amy, your supplement, now, yours is about beige flags.
Oh, yeah. So this was a double page in the Eye, and it caught my attention because we're all, in dating, you've got red flags, but something that is just an absolute no-go happens. But now there's this emergence of beige flags that we need to look out for. So, I mean, I'm not dating anymore, but I did myself a lot of dating. I think I probably went on 300+ dates.
Did you?
So I'm an old hand.
So you found your old man and you got married?
Yeah, I have got married.
We've got a picture of you and your old man. That's why you're...
yeah.
Outfit.
Stuck on the tube because Just Stop Oil closed the tube station due to a protest.
So you went to your own wedding bar tube because
we were 40 minutes late, but
you didn't mind.
No, I didn't. Well, I did in that moment mind.
Well,
but look, we didn't mind. We're having a great time.
Download the GBNews app. You can see Amy with snogging her husband
on the tube on the 40-degree Piccadilly line.
Just Stop Oil got in the way.
How long does it take to date 300 people, by the way?
What?
You dated 300?
Yeah, well, when I worked it out because it was something like I've dated for 10 years, went on roughly one date a week. It's more than that. It's thousands.
Is that how you met your partner?
And we met on a dating app.
Did you?
We met on Hinge.
Is it?
Yeah, I love that one.
Do you?
Much better than the
think it's gone down.
Look, beige flags, basically, these are things that give you the ick. So something happens and you're just like, I can't do this anymore.
I had one that did that.
Tell me what it was. Tell me your beige flag.
What it was, the beige flag was we went on a date and he was wearing these like really tight blue chino type things. Skinny fit. Man over 50-something wearing a skinny fit. Oh, it was terrible.
It with no socks?
I have to say, I went to him, what the hell have you got on? And that was it.
So where'd you put the beige flag?
That was
the beige flag is on the blue chino.
Right, listen, let's get on to my supplement anyway.
Because it's not actually morally dangerous, is it? No, blue chino.
No,
but it's enough.
And you wave a little beige flag?
No, you don't wave a beige flag.
I'm pulling your leg.
Danny.
Oh, God.
I'm pulling your leg.
You did. You succeeded. Whatever.
Right, finally, my supplement. It's a controversial decision by the Crown Prosecution Service. They sparked controversy regarding funding for gender transitions in cases of domestic abuse. In a new guidance, they've listed 9 types of behaviour which could amount to abuse of trans or non-binary people. And this decision by the CPS has been questioned over the rights and support available to victims of domestic abuse, criticised heavily by women's rights. Now, this comes as police recorded 1.5 million domestic abuse-related incidents in England and Wales. So an example of one of the things were if you refused gender reassignment surgery for your partner, that would be considered domestic abuse.
So if they wanted to
transition,
have gender...
and you said, no, you can't do that, no, pay for that.
But strip it back a little bit more. You're preventing your partner from seeking healthcare. So healthcare and medical care that they require and is potentially life-saving, you're withholding that.
Yeah, I find common ground with Amy. We finally find common ground on transgender issues.
What, so
2 hours into the show.
So if your partner said, look, Danny, I want to
be a bloke.
transition into a bloke, and you said, I'm not paying for that.
First of all,
if you have a trans
you're more than welcome to do what you want. Can you please leave, though?
Yes, well, she's watching. Listen to what he said. Right, well, on today's show, I've been asking, should the BBC reveal the identity of presenter X? And according to our Twitter poll, get this, 90% of you say yes, they should.
Nosy.
That's what they're saying, and 10% of you say no, well, we do pay for the BBC, but I get it, there are two sides to that coin. Thank you, a huge thank you to my panel. Thank you so much to the fabulous Danny Kelly.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very
at the
much to you. And also to Amy Nicole.
Turner,
for one day only.
No, I'm keeping it. I think I'm good. Yeah, I like it.
Because I heard you say it, isn't it? And also a huge thank you to you for watching. It's always a pleasure as ever. I look forward to seeing you next week. Same time, same place, 3 o'clock on Saturday. Enjoy your week.
The temperature's rising. Boxed Solar, proud sponsors of weather on GBNews.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Well, further showers and longer spells of rain over the next few days. There will be some sunshine though, but for many of us it will feel fresher. And the reason for this is this area of low pressure. It's been around over the last few days, just sat to the west of us, but over the coming few days it actually spreads towards us and increases the risk of showers and longer spells of rain even more. This evening we do have thundery showers across the UK, but they will start to fade away, and then most places overnight we'll see clear skies, though towards the early hours we could see some showers moving back into southwestern parts of the UK. Temperatures generally the low to mid-teens, so a little fresher than recent nights, but still quite warm for the time of year. Monday morning gets off to a dry start for many, plenty of sunny spells, though the cloud quickly thickens from the southwest. This area of rain pushes north-eastwards through the day, turning heavy at times, particularly across Wales, into the Midlands, northwest England too. Elsewhere, we'll see a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. And the best of the sunshine towards the southeast, we could see highs around 24 or 25 Celsius. Elsewhere, generally the high teens to low 20s. That area of rain across North Wales, northern England, continues to push further north as we head through the evening, and then further spells of rain push into southern parts of the UK as we move into the early hours. This could be heavy at times, so overnight a lot of cloud around, outbreaks of rain, and that will keep temperatures up generally a little higher, 14 to 17 degrees across much of the country. So it means a cloudy, wet start for many Tuesday morning, heavy showers already, but it should brighten up as we move through the morning into the afternoon, but that will trigger a few heavy showers too. Over the next few days it remains unsettled as that low pressure stays in charge. Further showers